What's up, everybody? Couple minutes late, running on, I guess we call this Debo time. But excited to have Ed Cowan on tonight to talk what I labeled old school bass fishing. Ed's probably forgot more about bass fishing than most of us know. What's up, Ed? How are you?
Oh, good. How you doing tonight?
Great.
Yep. Interesting that picture that you used for the promo. That was my 1988 374 V Ranger I bought new from Greens, and that's the boat I owned when I made my first classic. Of course, at the national championships and the classic, they supplied the boats back then, which is was great. And I sold that boat to Kota Kuriyama, and he made his first classic out of that same boat.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so tonight's stream, as always, is presented by Arsenal Fishing and boosted by Powerhouse Lithium. So I want to just shout out to them as we start the show. I guess, Ed, I've been meaning to have you on for a while, kind of like as a fan of the sport and somebody that appreciates the history. And it's always like trendy to have on like the latest Elite Series winners and, but like you have a lot of history with the sport. And I think I like to like mix it up. And I think this is a great opportunity to unpack some things and learn some stories. Because I think you have a lot of webs that touch a lot of other parts of the sport. And I think it's going to be cool to walk down some of those stories tonight.
Oh, yeah. I first, started watching you because I know you've made several of the Federation championships and came pretty close a few times. And I'm always keep up with what's going on with the Federation, even though I don't really try to make the classic that way anymore.
Sure. Yeah. And now it's the Bass Nation, but it's hard not to call it the Federation when you grew up with the Federation.
I was actually there. I made the last national championship I fished was the last one before the split.
Okay.
So
cool.
It was.
So I guess, I know you made two classics, right? One in the 90s and one in maybe like the Pittsburgh Classic, which was what, 05, something like that?
Yeah. Well, interesting. I made the first one in 1991. I won the national championship on Smith Mountain Lake in Virginia. And then the second one I made in 2005. I won it was on the Kissimmee chain. It was actually a 4-day event. I don't know if any of the other ones were 4-day events because we fished eliminations 2 days on the Kissimmee chain and 2 days on Disney at Disney World. And so I fished that Pittsburgh Classic was the lowest winning weight classic that there ever was. I also fished the Harris chain BASS Invitational in 1991, which is the worst tournament Bass ever had as an invitational. And the tournament before that invitational was on the Illinois River, and that was the worst one until they broke the record at the Harris chain. So I've been at Bass's 3 lowest weight events.
Nice. And was that out of Peoria?
Yeah, out of Peoria.
Yeah, my the very first time I ever made a Northern Regional Divisional when I was like 19 or 20 was out of Peoria. And that was a rude awakening coming from Minnesota to go to the Peoria River. And so we had Ontario in the Northern Division at that time. So we had 108 anglers. And I think I weighed in 3 days, the full field, fished all 3 days back then. And I weighed one 14-ounce bass, and that put me in like 73rd.
Oh, gee. I did fairly well. I did fairly well there. I came in the 19th, I think.
Yeah. In the tournament I was in, this was probably like August or September. So late summer, early fall.
Yeah.
Incredible time to fish. And I think 30 some anglers blanked on a 12-inch minimum across 3 days. So there were 30 guys, and these are all guys that, like you make it to regionals for the most part, you kind of got a clue to some degree, right? So these guys could not catch, 30 anglers did not catch a 12-inch fish in 3 days of competition.
Oh, yeah.
That's tough.
At that Pittsburgh Classic, my 15 ounces was better than Hackney or Jay Ellis did.
Yeah, nice. But yeah, I think there was only a few limits caught in that Illinois River tournament, and the guy that won it was Shad Schenk out of Indiana. Yep. He had a jet boat, and he like walked a mud flat to figure out how to get back to this one little clear pocket with a beaver dam. And basically him and his co-angler every day made it because the weight they get one day fishing with him was enough to propel them for 3 days.
Wow. Yeah, that's can be challenging.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. Like they were making a big deal this past week how bad the Sabine was. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, like that. I mean, yeah, the size wasn't great, but the numbers and that kind of stuff. I mean, like, I would say 80-90% of the guys were bringing in limits. So I mean, it was yeah. So unpack a little bit. Like, so I think you used to live in Jersey, but where do you live now?
I live in Northeast Pennsylvania. Right. I'm actually almost every day in Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania because I work at the town that borders. I live real close where the 3 states come together.
Sure. Okay.
On lunch, I actually go down and fish on the Delaware River out of Tri-State Park where they have the monument that has the 3 states coming together. So I can stand in one spot and fish in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York all at once.
That's pretty cool.
So
is that considered like that part of Jersey? Is that considered like lower or upper Jersey, or what do they consider that?
That'd be North Jersey.
North Jersey.
Yeah, just right there's where High Point is. High Point, Stokes Forest, State Forest in Jersey's High Point State Park is the highest point in New Jersey. It's 1,800 feet, and it's actually has the densest bear population of any state park in the lower 48. The number of bear we have around this area is pretty incredible. It's kind of common to see black bear. Yeah, but I lived in New York prior to that, and the first time I went to the Classic, I qualified through the New York Federation, and the second time was through the New Jersey Federation, because New York Federation was basically based in upstate New York, and even though people in New York City think everything above the city's upstate,
right,
which is pretty funny. And so, New Jersey. When I lived in New York, my basic home water was Greenwood Lake, which is half in Jersey and half in New York, and I made my first few national championships in a bunch of state teams out of New York, and I was at the I think the '94 national championship when Bryan Kerchal won, and and the president of the New Jersey Federation talked me into come fishing with Jersey. I'd been fishing a couple Jersey Fed tournaments anyway, and I actually knew a lot more of the Jersey guys. It was and then Pennsylvania, the state I live in now, with the Federation Nation and even the old Federation, they're broken up to like 7 districts. So Jersey and New York had better programs all along. So I never really did Pennsylvania.
Yeah, very cool. For people that want to ask questions, a new thing I want to try, I picked this up, listen to somebody else, but like if you want to start your chat with like question and then put it in, then it's easier for me to kind of just peek when questions are coming in. So just for perspective, like how many, I don't know if you know exactly, like how many Federation regional teams did you make and how many national championships did you make?
I fished 19 of the divisionals, and I've made 7 of the national championships and 2 classics. Wow. And that bush shootout, they had that bush shootout for a little while where they had like the old classic.
You did well in that too, didn't you?
Yeah, I finished second.
Yeah.
And the thing was, it was supposed to be a mystery lake, and so I go to Newark Airport in New Jersey, and all I have is a confirmation number. This is in 2005, so it's not that long after 9/11. And I go up to the ticket agent or whatever, and she asked, "Where am I going?" And I said, "I don't know. I thought Homeland Security was going to, waterboard me in the back or something."
Especially up in that, like, I mean, right? You're like epicenter of like 9/11, right? Like these other guys that are flying from like Alabama and like they're like, but yeah, like.
Yeah. No, I'm, Newark Airport's like, 10 miles from the trade centers and all. I mean, the guys I worked with and stuff were working a job in Jersey when that happened and saw it. going down and all that.
Sure.
It was because I was working construction in New Jersey at the time that happened. But then so she's looked all nervous. Said, "Listen, I won this fishing trip, and it's to a mystery location." And I gave her the number, and it all went good. And then it was on Table Rock, and here I'm fishing against Kevin VanDam and Hackney and Swindle on this. Everybody that was going thought it was going to be on some pet and shoot, like one of these plantations or something.
Sure.
And they go to where they had a tournament 8 months before, and I had to get somebody to show me on the map where we started, because this is back before GPS. I picked up the map when they took us to Bass Pro Shop, and I took it to Scott Rook, and I said, "Listen, just tell me where we are, so I know how to look at this map," And so I was motivated to outfish them since it was too fair.
Like, didn't they give you like a gift card, and then like you
have
to
go shop card,
at Bass Pro, right?
Yeah. It was.
So you qualified by catching the biggest bag at the Bass Nation or the Federation Championship? Is that?
Yeah. I caught the biggest bag the second day at the Federation National Championship. I had a little over 20 pounds.
Nice. Well, I got some work to do. I probably only got half that many regionals and only 3 national championships. So maybe there's still hope that I can put up similar stats, Ed.
Well, there's a few guys. Greg Alexander. You probably run across him in your travels. He has Alexander the Greg show, which I'm surprised he doesn't have very many subscribers. Pretty good show. And I think he's been to 30 or 29 or something teams and 9 or 10 national championships.
Yeah, is he from the Northeast there?
Yeah, he's from Maryland I believe Maryland. That's another thing about being in the Northeast division. We had 13 states. We go from Maine to Maryland out to West Virginia. So those divisional teams traveled around, and even I guess Virginia was in our division too. We had one of those divisionals on the Ohio River. It was I fished New York. I made the national championship in 91, 92, and 94 because most of the New York guys, they're good fishermen, but they're all from upstate New York, and they'd send us someplace that the fishing wasn't very good.
It was a grind, and you were a better grinder than they were.
I basically was fishing in New Jersey,
Right.
So, but then I switched. These guys talk. Tony Going, who was a Jersey president, convinced me to come over to New Jersey, and I didn't. I took Angler of the Year a couple of times for this, but it was till 2000 that I made the national again, and it was on. The divisional was on the Ohio River, and that's the only divisional team I ever pre-fished for. Because we'll talk about more later. I don't pre-fish a lot. I've always worked, full-time job, fished on the weekend, and I got pretty good at not pre-fishing, which helped me a lot in that bush shootout thing because I'm accustomed to just going out blind fishing. So I pre-fished for the Ohio River. The first day I had 4.5 pounds, put me in, I think, second place. And the second day I caught 3.5 pounds. The 2.5 pounder I caught was lunker, and it moved me to the lead. And the third day I zeroed. I fished fourth overall. I made the national championship. So that's that tournament got won with a little over 10 pounds out of the Ohio River in West Virginia.
Yeah, the first time I ever made the national championship was actually on a decent lake. It was Lake Monroe in Indiana. Yeah. And practice was actually pretty good for some people. And my practice was good, but we had a lot of wind and clouds and rain, and this was in August, so there was a lot of fronts moving through during practice. And the Tuesday night before we got there, some guy won an evening tournament with 27 pounds, just blasted them. But tournament comes literally, right? So we practice whatever, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right? Then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday tournament. And it basically flattened out, bluebird skies, you couldn't find a cloud, a wisp of nothing, zero wind, and those fish clamped up big time. I think I caught 7 fish in 3 days for 14 pounds and took like top 5 and moved on from Minnesota. Not a single person caught a limit. Not even the 12 guys from Indiana. Any of them could catch a limit any day.
Wow.
So, I mean, like,
they had a couple of those national championships on the Mississippi River someplace. And the same guy from New Jersey, it was Rich Snidewright, which, Pete Glusek from Bass University.
Yeah, the dean.
It's basically his mentor, the guy taught him how to fish, made 2 national championships. Both of them were on the Mississippi River. And the fishing was so bad, he never caught a fish.
But he just won like a coin flip, or?
Oh, well, I mean, a few fish got caught in it, but they were the ones that with terrible weights. But this Rich Snidewright got to the national twice, didn't catch a fish either time, and he's as good as anybody around here.
Sure.
He had the misfortune of going to the worst place they ever went twice.
It was 10 pounds for the whole tournament, not just per day.
Yeah, 10 pounds for the whole tournament. Yeah, but it's changed a lot. I don't know if everybody knows, like, the format's changed. Like in like the first state team I ever went to was, I think it was in '84. It was when Danny Correa qualified for the Classic. Now back then it was an 8-man team, and the top finisher on the winning team went from the divisional right to the Classic.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that's how.
There was no national.
Nope, no national. The first national, I'm not sure. Bass doesn't have like real good records of it. They know it's hard to research it. The first one was either 89 or 90.
So, but the winner from the regional, not the winner of like the state team, right? Like if you won the regional,
the guy with the most weight on the winning team, didn't matter what place.
Okay, the winning team, top guy. So you could be like,
you could be 3rd, 4th, whatever.
Yeah. You could be top 5 or 10, but yeah, okay, all right, that's interesting.
Yeah, because in 1990 at the Connecticut River, the New York team won, and I was the top guy in New York, but they had national championship at that point.
Sure.
Well, I didn't win that tournament as an individual. I was 3rd, or I don't even remember exactly, but I qualified for that as the top guy in each team go. So and
that's.
But when I
don't know when they. So like my first regional was like 99 or 2000, or that was that Illinois River one. And at that time it was a 12-man team, 6 boaters, 6 co-anglers, and it was still a draw format. So you get, even as a non-boater, you would get your 4 hours. And and at that time it was the top person from the team. Every team sent 1 to national. So you just had
that's how it was. The
payouts were on a team, so you could win a boat or most of the time it was a boat back then, or a cash prize. The team would split it, but then only the winner of the team would go on. So basically it works out that every state gets 1 qualifier in the national championship.
Yeah. Now, it's been so long since there's been draw tournaments that guys don't realize that about Bryan Kerchal rode in both the divisionals that he made the Classic, made the national championships off of. He never fished as a boater at the divisionals or the invitationals he fished until after he won that Classic.
Mm-hmm.
He had a boat, but it was junk, and he wouldn't subject anybody to taking this thing. So he rode it. The 2 divisionals he made, he was a non-boater, but it was a draw tournament. So he was titled half his time, and he made both the times he made the state team. He made the national championship, and he made the Classic. He made the Classic in 93 and 94.
Yeah, and he went from, I think, 93 he finished dead last, right, in the Classic, and then 94 he won it.
Yeah. Well, dead last is like, if you're not going to win the Classic, you want to finish dead last.
It still makes it. It's a legendary story, but that only even adds to it more than right.
But I mean, if you look at the Classic history, Clun finished dead last, Brower finished dead last.
Right.
A lot of the winners finished dead last in past Classics. So it's probably a good place to finish if you're not first.
Yeah, I mean, like literally like 26th right through 50th pays 10,000 whether you. I mean,
Well, it was
win it or lose.
3,000. 3,000
Back
the
then,
first
but now
time.
it's 10,000. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 8 when I fished that up. Well, the first time in 91 I finished 13th, so I won a little bit more. And then I don't know, at Pittsburgh I caught a fish and about 8 guys didn't. So
yeah, you were in the mid 40s or something like
yeah,
that.
someplace in the 40s. And they didn't cut the fields way back. And like in 91, my your press guy could fish. And everybody fished all 3 days.
Yep.
And both of them I made, and all the championships, all the showcase tournaments I fished were with the identical boats. So
yeah, they kind of went away from provided boats at the Classic around when the Elite Series started.
I think it was I think they still did in 2005, but I'm pretty sure I have a friend, Chris Loftus, who made the Classic through the Federation in 2008, and he had to get his boat approved. So sometime after 2005 and before 2008, they started using their own boats. And Chris Loftus is an interesting character. He basically made the Classic and stopped tournament fishing.
That happens more than you think, because I feel like there was a guy that my first year making national was the Watchtower River in 2014. I think I may have sat next to that Greg Alexander, because I talked to a guy from the Northeast that had made like 10 national championships at that point.
Yeah, that might be him.
And he sat with his wife, and she's like, "Oh, he always had, and never quite works out or whatever."
Yeah.
But the year before that was also on the Watchtower River, and there was a guy from the Northeast, I can't remember his name, who finished top 3, made the Classic and the Elite, and he might even fish. I don't know if you remember fished, but like you see a lot of guys, especially with the Bass Nation, they make that Classic, and then they kind of burn out. Like it's like there's so much maybe pressure to back it up, and it just like consumes them. I'm not sure. I don't.
Oh, Chris is a chemical engineer, and he said he had no intention of being a bass pro. He just wanted to prove to himself he was good enough to make it. And once he reached his goal, he had no reason to pursue it any further. That's kind of like I was initially, like in the late 80s, I thought I wanted to fish professionally, and I figured the going through the Federation at that time was a good route to get started. They had that Wrangler sponsorship deal. They only had 6 tournaments a year. 3 of them would be in the fall, 3 would be in the spring, so you could do it on paid vacation if you had, or you get away with holding down a job and fishing the national circuit.
Fabian Rodriguez was the guy I was trying to think of.
Oh yeah, Fabian. I know him too.
From Delaware.
Yep. Yeah, well, he was on the Elites for a little while.
Yeah, so I think like many other.
He's fishing the divisional or whatever it is right now.
Okay, maybe still around.
Like today.
I just haven't heard from him in a while.
Because I looked down the list, from the results on the Potomac River from the Federation today, and I was surprised how many guys that were at past national championships and divisionals that were on that list. Still, these guys that are still fishing.
When was the last time that you fished the nation or the Federation?
Basically, when the split. Well, I'm in a club, and I made a state team in 2011.
Okay,
but basically, I traveled on, like, after making the Classic in 91, I started fishing the invitationals, and I did that for a couple of years, and I traveled with Artie Applebaum, Bryan Kerchal, and Dave Barnes Sr. from Maine. When we were doing that, and and then I dropped. I had to choose between. I was in 29th place in the standings for the Classic standings, with 2 tournaments left for the year, and I had to choose between keeping my job and going to the next tournament. So I didn't go to the next tournament, and I started the next year after that too. But then after accident with Bryan, I wanted the Bryan Kerchal trophy.
Sure.
So I'm at 2005 when I made the Classic, I was really pretty indifferent about actually qualifying for the Classic. I just wanted to win the national championship. Of course, because I missed making the Classic by 2 ounces in 2000 at one of the, but that one I wanted the Bryan Kerchal trophy.
Sure,
So
that's cool.
So after
I guess, how did you?
you make your goals and you.
For those who don't know, I guess Bryan Kerchal, only nation federation angler to ever win the Classic.
Yep.
And what year was that again, Ed?
94.
94, and I think it was in Kerr. Was it on Kerr? Falls
Oh,
Lake, or
I should know that.
High Point, or
High
somewhere.
Point. It was High Point. Yeah.
And so I mean, now the trophies, the Bryan Kerchal Memorial Trophy.
Yeah.
So what year did you meet Bryan, and how did you get to know him?
93. I mean, after you qualified for his first Classic, I'm only Candlewood Lake's the place in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
You might have heard of Candlewood Lake because it's makes Bass top 100 list every year. Paul Mueller guides there, it's 100 miles from me, Candlewood Lake. And actually, I lived in New York at the time, so it was only 50 miles from me. And after he made the Classic, as a federation angler, I wanted to meet him, invite him to go fishing. The first time, he was young, like he was 8 years younger than me. I guess I was probably 33 at the time in 93, and he was like 23 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to meet this kid. I invited him to go fishing. I figured I'd impress him, took him to a lake I really knew. And I couldn't catch any fish. I took him out to pre-fish for a federation tournament. And he was like so positive, and this place is, we go to a spot, and it's like, they're here. And then after we practiced the day, he told me what he would do. He said, I'd start right there. I started there. I caught 15 pounds in the first hour and ended up winning the tournament. And so he just had a natural talent because he really didn't know much about fishing. He had taught himself how to fish. He was in the club, but he's like pretty shy and quiet. He was basically just learning how to tournament fish when he made the first Classic. It's just all because I fished those tournaments in the early 90s were draw tournaments.
Yep.
I fished with Kevin VanDam. At one point I'd fished with 6 of the top 10 money winners on the Bass circuit. And only 3 guys really had something different. Something they just like. You can fish with Shaw Grigsby. Shaw Grigsby is a super guy and super fisherman, but he's not Kevin VanDam. And when you fish with Kevin VanDam, you know that there's something different about him than Ron Sheffield, Shaw Grigsby, some of these other guys I'd fish with. Another one, George Cochran. Yeah. The third guy is Bryan Kerchal. These guys just have something that great fishermen don't have. They have that X factor Bryan would have really been a superstar, I'm sure.
What you kind of say, like he's fishy, right? Like he has the
yeah, all 3 of them, they're just so aware of what they're more aware of what's happening on the end of your line than you are. Sure. I took on another lake I knew. I went with Bryan one time fishing. We fished the weekend before he won the Classic. So when we were fishing Lake Apacon, and there was this stretch of bank, and you just caught fish. You fish the milfoil, and right there you catch fish. Right in front of you, get right in front of that tree, and there'd be fish. And we're flipping along there and fishing along there, and he's asking what's there, and I'm hemming and hawing because I don't know. It's just you catch fish right there. He flips in there, and he says, "Oh, it just got deeper." And I went back and checked. We were like 12 feet of water, and right there it gets 6 inches deeper. And he took one pitch with a worm, and he knew
with
that
a lead weight on mono, on a not very good graphite rod back in the day, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He didn't have that was before he won the Classic. He didn't have good equipment. He just knew. And when he was really, that's kind of finesse pitching is what his biggest strength was. That's how he won the national championship. That's how he won the Classic.
Picking a culprit on a lightweight, right?
Yeah, if he could make that work, you couldn't beat him. Nobody could beat him. And that, okay, so Bryan's Classic. So I don't know, some people are familiar, some are not. He basically caught the fish pitching a worm around docks. Okay, and High Point Lake, David Fritzen won the year before. Okay, and that was like David Fritz's home lake. So I asked Bryan after, it's like, you ever see Fritz during tournaments? It's like, oh sure, he was fishing right off the bank in front of me. And a lot of times, we complicate fish a lot, but when fish live in an area, he was fishing for the same fish that Fritz was hoping to be fishing for. Fritz's fish just moved up on the bank.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated. Fish, yeah. I don't know. I was going to work that in the conversation someplace.
Yeah, no. So David's asking, like, is it true that he kind of drifted off and napped in practice and floated into the bay that he won the class again?
I know he found that plastic worm.
Yeah, I heard that, like, where he found.
No, he didn't find the fish. He took a nap, and when he woke up, he found that bait.
Yeah,
the area he'd.
And then he was looking around the docks, and there was a red culprit worm floating or on the dock or something. He's like, "Well,
but he'd often
catch him out here, so I'm going to use that bait, right?" Like,
yeah, he'd often win tournament like the national championship. I think he won on a jig, basically doing the same thing around cypress trees. He was but he just had a natural talent, and he just knew like where fish were. I mean, he had good instincts, and he trusted his instincts. It's we miss him.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, like, right, and I guess the people that don't, which even adds to it, right? He basically won the Classic. He was fishing the invitationals the next year, right?
Yeah, it was funny, all the season between making the first and second Classic, I was trying to get Ranger's boat to, I was sponsored by them, and I'm trying to get the salesman. It's like, you got to put this kid in the boat. You got to put this kid in the boat. And the salesman, all that, he had long hair and he was young. He says, "Oh, that pot smoking hippie, I'm not giving him a boat." And then this Frank Geiner from Connecticut, I fished the team tournaments with at the time, had Skeeter like sold on this kid, but he wanted a Ranger, and he wouldn't take this Skeeter. And the season of the Invitationals, 93 to 94, he was towing this junk old Ranger he had to the tournaments and riding every day because he wouldn't make anybody going this wreck of a boat. And so he got that boat. He got a boat from Ranger after he won the Classic, and fished one more invitational on Lanier and Georgia and came into money. And then he went off on some promotional thing.
Flying to a speaking event or something that he had because he won the Classic, right? And
he's coming home for Christmas. He didn't make it home.
Yeah, plane crash.
Yeah, it was one of them. And there was some survivors. That was one of the longest days of my life, trying to see what was going on. Our survivors were immediately adjacent to him in seats, in fact.
Crazy. And
Chris Mann, his best friend, has the boat still.
Wow.
I think and stuff. They had Arkland Bass. He made state team or something with the boat one year. It might even been national. I don't remember exactly. We always told Chris he was too smart to catch a fish. Chris Mann's a pretty smart guy. He's a fisheries biologist, but he struggles when it comes to tournament fishing. I think you got the instinct more means a lot in fishing. Yeah, people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and he had that. I don't know. Did he start the whistle in the classic that he won, or did he? Was that
Yeah,
something he
yeah.
did
Somebody had given him that whistle, and it was good luck, and he just he blew it after he
every
caught each
fish? Or,
fish. Yeah, and the coolest thing ever is Brandon Polinick, when he made it through the Federation, he finished I believe third, and he was blowing that whistle.
Yeah.
So I will always respect Brandon Polinick for that. I'm sure he probably has the KVD factor. I've never fished with him. So anyway, so when we went to the '94 national championship on the Arkansas River, Brian and his roommate Dave Barnes both made the national championship, and it was the week after an invitational. I forget where the invitational was, because with the work stuff I fished the national championship instead of the invitational. I dropped that's another season I didn't fish the full season. I couldn't get the time, and the national championship I figured was a better thing than an individual invitational. And so I fished sixth in that tournament. that was the only national championship I ever fished that, at the time they were taking one guy from each of the 5 divisions, and first, second, third, fourth, and fifth were all different divisions. And so when Brian won, it's like, listen, you just beat me. I was second division. You better win the classic now. So, and then we're all caravanning back. Dave's got his boat. Brian has his boat, his junk boat behind his junk pickup truck, and I just have my truck because coming through the construction, and I think I was getting pretty close to home. I was out in front of everybody. We all had CBs back then, and we're coming through the construction in Scranton, and Barnes gets on the radio and says, "Hammerhead just lost his bumper." So I had to I turned around, and Brian was pulling his boat with just a bumper hitch on the old pickup truck, and the one side of the bumper broke. So after he beat me out of going to the classic there, I dragged his boat to my house. So we put the bumper in the bed of his truck. When he drove on home, got a receiver hitch, to come back and pick the boat. I go out to his boat one day before he picked it up, and I touch something and it falls off. So because he wasn't real mechanical, so he came over and we spent the day, putting hatches back on and just fixing his boat and all.
That's crazy. Some of those stories kind of remind me of like Maddie's story a little bit. Maddie Wong, a little bit.
Yeah. But it's amazing. Maddie made it to the classic. He had to fish the national championship out of that 30-year-old boat of his. I'm not jealous of that. That's another reason I'm not too amped up about pursuing it. It was like, what a thing those national championships were when they were the classic for the Federation.
Yeah. 2013 was the last year that the boats were provided.
Did you get to fish any of them?
No, I fished the next year.
Oh, that's a shame.
Which is funny because the year, so the 2013 regionals, our state tournament was on Minnetonka, and I caught the fish to finish second in our state tournament, which would have sent me to somewhere in Iowa for a regional.
Yeah.
But I tweeted or Facebooked updated like during the tournament. Social media was and I got DQ'd for using my phone in a non-emergency situation.
Oh no.
So, and then Andy Nichols, who's a friend of mine, moved on from Iowa to go to the Ouachita River in 2013. So, no guarantees I would have made it, but like I should have been in that regional at least to get to that. Just kind of stupid. But I think part of it was that Ouachita River was really hard on equipment. So I think a lot of those that year was Skeeter. So there was a lot of Skeeter Yamahas that got really wrecked. 53, 54 guys running around the Watchtower River, which has very little mapping now. I mean, I just fished it again, and the year Maddie one was at 20. And it still doesn't have good mapping. And so can you imagine what it was like in 2013 when graphs came a long ways in that 8-10 years and mapping. So it's like, I don't know how many fiberglass repairs and lower units probably got wiped out. And so I was like, that probably was the straw that broke the camel's back of like, this is, not working. But I would say that besides the provided boats, I finished in 14, 19, and 20. And those are all 3 John Stewart. Very much still felt like mini classics. We had the boatyard. We were put up in hotels. They fed us. They gassed up our boats. We had a service crew. Like, outside of the provided boats, I think they very much were a miniature version of the classic. Now, this is the last year of, 50 guys fishing the national championship. And I talked to some guys, like I talked to Maddie, and he said even last year at Pickwick, without John Stewart, the vibe was already starting to like change for sure.
Yeah. It's probably a lot like it was at the 2006, knowing that the federation was split. Yeah. And well, things have changed with that a lot too. Like when I went back, I won in 91 and went back in 92. That was an automatic berth.
Mm-hmm.
The early ones, I requalified. I, made it in 92. Now the 2006, the last one I fished was the first time. I think it was the first that they had the guys defending their championship. Maybe. As far as
I know. I guess all the ones I fished had defending champions.
Yeah.
And actually, in 2019 on Pickwick, guy from out west, he had a really bad first day, but then he came back and had a big bag second day, and he knocked me out by 2 ounces for making the day 3 cut.
Yeah.
The defending champ did. He's from Oregon. I can't remember his name. But
well, the cool thing, when I went in 2006, I rode down with Bob Soley out of New Jersey, and he made the classic through that. Bob Soley's an interesting guy. He was one of the group of guys that from the New Jersey area that went out on the circuit, started fishing the pro tournaments with Mike. At the same time as Mike, they all roomed together. And Solely fished 1 year on the invitationals and made the classic in 99 and qualified for the, I guess his top 100 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have the money to do it. He made it about halfway through his 2000 season. And then he went to the classic the second time as a federation angler in 2006. And he said it was the hard way to get there. He found making it to classic as a pro was fairly easy. But it's it's an expensive thing to do. I mean, it's a tough thing to do. It's a good hobby. I still club fish. I mean, I've club fished since the late 70s.
Right.
And the first, I think I was in the first club in 76. And in that club, we had a guy out of Terrytown, New York, that nobody probably ever heard his name. Don Cachano. He made the classic as a pro in 84 and 85. And he would go fish all the pro tournaments, and we would bring everything back to the club. And as far, probably got me on my first state team, the fact that he was in the club, because the guys in my club would do really well because we knew what was going on, because Don Caggiano knew what was going on because he was fishing. The amount of information available now is just like, it's astonishing. I think it's too much. I think some guys at like the club level and beginning level, I think they suffer from information overload.
Sure.
I think some of this, like there's a lot of talk these days about this live scope, which I don't have, and pretty indifferent about. Really, I don't see the same guys that would beat me by fishing off the bank locally or like in my club. Say that hasn't made them any better, hasn't made them any worse. It's kind of, if they're off the bank, there's certain guys are going to catch them structure fishing. There's certain guys are going to catch them in shallow water at any given time. But I think the guys that are not successful or maybe less successful, because I have a friend in our club, and he goes to the Bass universities and studies everything and has everything, and it's just like he really doesn't know what he
and he can speak it, right? Like he can recite it and speak it and sound right, but like when it comes to applying it on the water, it just goes out the window. Like it doesn't happen.
He could put his trolling motor down at the ramp with a spinner bait and stand on it until it's time to weigh in. He would have more success.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in spinner baits myself.
Nice.
Because history's important. History's valid. When the very first classics, they get these guys that made the classic, they put them in an airplane and they limit their tackle to very little tackle, and they put them up in the air, and then they tell them where they were going. And every place they went, the tournament got one with a spinnerbait. So if you don't think you can that'll work in your club tournament, I got news for you. I mean,
so you like a spinnerbait more than a chatterbait?
I do. I'm real basic. Important thing that I find helpful is to like keep track of what baits you've actually weighed in your fish. So let's say, you fish 10 tournaments over a year, and you weighed in 40 fish, and I want to know how many fish I caught on which baits. And most years I catch most of my fish on a jig, because at some point I realized that I wasn't going to beat Rich Snidewright, that guy that went to the national championships and zeroed, by catching more fish than him, because he weighed a limit of the fish. In the late 80s or early 90s, 30-some years ago, I took the Federation, results, and I figured out how many fish a day the guys that finished in the top like 15, how many fish a day they were catching, what the average size of their fish was. And this Rich Snidewright was many times Angler of the Year for the state of New Jersey Bass, Jersey Bass Federation, Pete's mentor. He was catching a limit of the average size fish every day. So I realized if I was I was catching almost a limit of the average size fish every day. It's like the only way I'm going to beat this guy is to catch bigger fish. So that's Ben Milliken. They make a big thing about him targeting big fish. I figured out you're only fishing for 5 fish. You can't be fooling around trying to, get your limit before you call. You had to target bigger fish. And I started throwing a jig a lot more. So on my good years, I catch most of my fish on a jig. And probably my second best fish bait's a spinner bait. And then once you start getting, I basically throw a spinner bait, a jig, a buzz bait, crankbait, and a Senko, and sometimes a bladed jig. But once I go past like those 6 baits, it's like I'm not
diminishing returns at that point.
Oh, diminishing returns, yeah. You'll be able to catch them with a spinner bait, a buzz bait, and a jig. That's
And I think, don't you make a lot of your own buzz baits and jigs and things like that?
Well, I got cool buzz bait here to show you. I invented this thing. Basically, that's an 1/8-ounce buzz bait, and rather than a skirt, I take a standard tube and of course I have trouble stringing it on because I'm on this thing. And voila, I got an 1/8-ounce buzz bait that I can throw on a bait casting rod with 15-pound test or 40-pound braid, and it'll go over anything. And the other thing really cool about it is if you stop it, it falls and shakes like a Senko. So when you miss a fish, or if you got fish following, or if you miss a fish, you just stop and he eats it.
So when did you start throwing that tube buzzbait?
We've been doing this for 30 years, but until I actually made a mold for it, I would take a Cavatron, pull the blade off, straighten it out, run the tube through the whole thing, and put it all back together. So this was a lot easier than disassembling and reassembling.
Sure.
An 8
You're really pissed if a pickerel chewed up your tube after you did that and you spent all that time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's for sure. Oh, because this is the best pickerel bait ever devised by man. I'll guarantee you that. Because
do you switch up the tube colors? Is it like, do you like green, white?
Green, white, black, any color you want. I got.
So you were doing this before everybody else started putting horny toads on their buzzbait.
Oh yeah, and mostly initially just doing it so you could cast it on real. Because 8-ounce buzzbaits are real good, especially in tidal water. One of those BASS tournaments got one on the Potomac in like the 90s on a little Cavatron. And we figured initially did it so we could cast with it. Just so I could cast with it. But found out that it has more advantages as I learned. And now, and I also made myself a mold for what everybody has, right. A froggy one.
But you did it so you could fish finesse buzzbaits more effectively with
real real tackle. Because you're throwing these finesse buzzbaits into over the milfoil beds in the Potomac River or something and catching 4-pound fish on your spinning rod. And also 30 years ago we were doing it with mono,
right? So
you're trying to throw an actual skirted 8-ounce buzzbait. What can you throw it on? 10-pound test maybe,
right? Whereas like now you could put it on 30-pound braid and
in
a medium heavy spinning rod, you'd probably be okay now. But
it throws fine on a casting rod. You'd be amazed how well that thing casts. Also, I think these the frog ones, and with this tube, I think having the plastic rather than a skirt, the fish get it better. I don't know if it's the suction of the fish sucking in allows it to get in their mouth better, or you have more confidence in letting the fish take it.
Right.
I don't know if it's psychological that you hook more fish because you don't feel like you kind of set the hook that fast, or if they actually get it better. I think they get it. I think it's both. But we have all kinds of theories. When they get fancy technology, they find out half our theories are wrong. The bottom line is, if you can catch the fish, I'm happy. I also
absolutely.
Yeah. Also, I make some weird jigs. This isn't have the application because of the weed control anymore, but this is like a 1-ounce jig, and it's an Upperman style head. If you can see that, it's real. It's flat and it's thin, so it goes through the milfoil especially well. You can punch with this thing. That's one of the things we talked on. I was talking on Mike's podcast. When I was talking with Mike, he told me somebody told him punching was invented in like '94. I won a federation tournament on Cayuga Lake punching milfoil with this thing in '88. So I know that's not true. And Tom and I didn't invent this. This guy I just made a mold of it because I was running out. And a guy in Jersey used to sell these way back, and no longer did. I also I make my little swim jig, which this is poured on an offset worm hook. So I think
is that round rubber on that.
Yeah. I use rubber on most all my stuff. Yep, that's just round rubber. And one of the cool things about like making your own baits is you can, hook wise and stuff, you can put any size hook in any. usually hooks are related to the weight of a bait. See, this, I don't know if you can see those two. Okay, that one. Which
A little higher.
direction? Here. Here.
There you go.
Let's see. Got,
yeah. The one in
the
your
one,
left hand has a pretty small compact
yeah,
hook.
yeah. So you can make a compact jig or a bigger jig out of the same mold. You know, and I don't know if I make some of this stuff. I'm on Instagram, Ed Cowan 5. So
Yeah,
usually for my friends, I'll
I was
sell a
just about to
few.
say that. Like Ed Cowan 5, you can see he's got pictures of some of his molds and his tinkerings and his different
I don't
buzz
exactly.
baits and yeah.
I don't want to sell tons of them because I you know,
You want to go fishing.
yeah, and most of this stuff I got to pour one at a time because they're like homemade molds. That's what. Oh, there's another thing that we've reproduced that I'm not trying to sell at all, but I didn't want to spend. This is the one you get a lot of talk about glide baits and swim baits, and this is the one I threw this a bit, a line through swim bait, and the main reason the thing I like about it is it skips real well,
Mm-hmm.
which is one of the big advantages to the toad on the freaking buzz baits that it skips. And I let a big secret out here. There's this product that's meant for like making models and stuff. It's like smooth on. Yeah, it's a mold. It's a high temperature silicone, and you can mix it up and you can reproduce anything with it. So if you have some kind of outdated bait, or if you can add some clay or grind away at some lure you have and modify it, and then you can make a mold out of it and make lures.
So, and then you can direct it. That will take hot lead, right?
Yeah. It's intended for pewter, and some of my baits I'll vary the weight on them by pouring stuff in tin. Yeah. Some of them I pour in lead, some I pour in tin, so you can basically make an identical bait in two different weights by using different tin or lead on the same bait. I also use a tin. I have the usual do-up molds, and in the late in the fall I'll throw blade bait, silver buddy, whatever type of bait, and I have no capacity to make a chrome bait, but if you pour it in tin, you can polish it, and you got a chrome silver buddy. And lead you'll have to paint, or otherwise get nasty after a while.
You kind of mentioned like logging your baits, and actually the last 2 years I've been going back through my tournament videos and rewatching them, and then cataloging what are my wave fish coming on, and then also using Excel and pivoting out what are my wave fish in tournaments that I cash checks and win in, right? So like looking at it both ways. What do I wave fish on, and then which ones actually produced money finishes?
Yeah,
so that's interesting to start, and then so I'll keep doing that. But
what'd you find out?
So 2 years ago, it was actually, I think I caught more than 50% of my wave fish, or close to 50% on a frog.
Wow!
Now I did have several tournaments on the Mississippi River that year, which probably influenced it to some degree.
Yeah.
And the jig was up there both years. I'm trying to think. The tube last year, the tube was big, but I had a lot of tournaments on smallie waters, so stupid tube produced a lot of fish. So it definitely, like, if I'm only fishing 10-ish, 12-ish tournaments a year, right, and the schedule will influence, but there are things like a jig and a Texas rig and a chatterbait that I think they were in the top 3 both years. So
really, keeps you from buying too many baits or something. And
I've definitely gotten more simple. Like when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s, like I was on eBay buying the JDM little crankbaits and all that, like caught up in like the newest stuff and the JDM stuff and the hard to find stuff. and all the colors and they're the rainbow. And then what I started realizing as a tournament fisherman, like if I got this like cool crankbait off eBay and then I was catching them on it and then I lost it, then I'd lose my confidence and I wouldn't be able to get it. Right. And then it's like, you know what I mean? Like you'd be like, in practice or in a multi-day tournament and you lose that secret crankbait. And all of a sudden you're like mentally, even though it probably didn't matter that much, in your head, you're like, oh, what am I going to do? I can't get that crankbait. It'll take me 2 weeks to get another one. Right. And so over the years, I still like some new, I dabbled, I bought some of the Chad shads and I do experiment to some degree, but I don't go way overboard. I'm much more calculated and I'm sticking to like green pumpkin, black and blue, key colors, keeping it simple. Yeah.
Well, I have a great tip method. You find yourself a fishing buddy or fishing partner that's an absolute tackle junkie that buys every new thing that comes along, and you go fishing with them. And unless he outfishes you, you never buy one.
There you go.
I got a friend like that.
Yeah.
Every new thing that comes down the pike, he's got the full.
So the 1 out of 10 when he beats you, then you go like, all right, I'll buy that one.
Yeah. Oh, the spy bait. That's silly spy bait. Oh my goodness. So we're out fishing and having a tough day, and you could see the fish were suspended out off this break, and he tries this spy bait out and he takes it out and throws it out and catches like a 2.5 pound largemouth right away. It's like, okay, so he caught one. It's pretty good lake, not that big a deal. And then the next cast he has a fish on. Well, he caught like 20 crappie in a row. I wasn't that worried. But when he caught that fish and got another bite right away, I figured I was going to have to buy those darn things.
Yeah,
I have one.
I have some. I don't like to throw them. I like to power fish. Kind of feel like we're a little bit of a kin. We like to fish the same way. We'll finesse fish when we have to, but we'd prefer not to.
Yeah, I think like there's guys on some of these guys do real well. Well, I've been watching and listening to some of these podcasts that have this Ben Milliken guy on, and it's really interesting to watch. And it's really doesn't make me want to be him. The first thing that struck me was he was talking, maybe he's on BTL, and he's had to get his oil change or something on the boat because his 5-week-old boat had like 90 hours on the outboard.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't think I've idled for 90 hours on my 15-year-old boat. I got less than 600 hours on a 15-year-old boat. I'm not going to spend that time.
My boat, my Camus is exactly a year old, I think, today. And I fish quite a bit. Maybe not as many as some people, but I'm much more than, I'm right. I get out 6-8 times a month at least. And then I have tournaments like the state and stuff where I'll fish 7-8 days in a row. Right. And fish for up here, right up north, 12, 13, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
I think I have 55 hours on my boat in 1 year.
Yeah. That's about what I put on an average year. Cause when you're on the water, you're fishing.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing that gives these, like a club level guy, the real expectation or whatever with like the fancy electronics is if you're fishing 30 hours, 40 hours a month, that's probably what you said is equating to. Sure. You're going to spend 2.5 months looking at your depth finder. That's you're not going to do it. I'm not convinced. Like guys have success, but I don't know that they have any more success. I don't know what percent of these guys, even at the top level, Keith Poche and John Cox aren't fishing like that. Mm-hmm. And, if 75% of the guys are fishing with live scope and 25 aren't, and their live scope's winning 70% of the tournaments, it's less effective.
Yeah. And there are certain tournaments like St. Clair, the next tournament coming up, absolutely will be like Keith Poche doesn't have a chance in that tournament if he doesn't.
Yeah, well, I know.
And I think up north where we live, the grass is a bit of an equalizer for the live scope. It does play at times, and you will pick fish off, and it can help. But like but we have a lake that's kind of like Green Lake out in Spicer,
Yeah.
west of Minneapolis. Like it's like St. Clair. It's gotten to the point now, if you're not chasing around individual smallies, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But it's not every lake, and it's another tool. And
yeah, I mean, if
in certain situations, it's a must-have, especially at high-level competition. But your weekend anglers, it's still a luxury item. You don't really need it.
Yeah, I think it hurts a lot of weekend guys. I mean, if I was fishing professionally full time, I would have it. And I would learn how to use it.
Right.
I've been in boats. Guys have 360s. I like the 360 pretty well. What I don't like about the 360 is the crazy transducer setup, and how that affects you
when you want to go shallow and throw your 1/8 ounce buzzbait and it's caking milfoil around your
exactly. So, yeah, you get the picture.
I have a 360 and a Live Scope Plus,
yep.
But I rigged mine up so there's a way that if you get 2 Solix knobs,
yeah,
you can do a quick disconnect on your 360, so you can just like hand screw and lay it on the deck.
Okay.
So and I Velcro my cables so that I can so it's not zip tied or taped. Like I can So like if I'm offshore and I determine I need 360, but then all of a sudden I determine this isn't working, I'm going to go up in the slop and frog, I can pull my 360 off. And I also, with the screw on my Live Scope, I put an extra mount up on like the barrel of my Ultrix.
Yeah.
So I can unscrew that and then screw that to right under the head. So I can go from like deep mode, best electronics you can have, but in like a minute, I could take those transducers off and get them out of the way and go plow through duckweed.
Yeah. I'm not fishing the stuff you're fishing anymore. So and if I'm fun fishing, I'm choosing to plow through duckweed.
Right. Yeah, but I am a guy that likes at heart, I'd rather be touching my rod tip with the bottom and catching them power fish in shallow cover. So
that's long while you're tracking how what you caught these fish that you weighed in on. You track how deep you catch them, and if you're me, you find out you catch one fish in the season for the club in more than 10 feet of water, and 3 more than 5 feet of water.
Yeah, I haven't done to that level, but it's probably similar.
Yeah. So,
cool.
I just think
Ed, I want to take a quick break here.
Okay,
like 30 seconds, and we're gonna roll a clip from one of our other partners here real quick.
Okay, great.
Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. We have a wide variety of home loan programs in our tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. You can ask HellaBass. He trusted us to help finance his home. Contact the Dream Team today by searching Supreme Lending Dream Team, or click the link below in the description, or scan the QR code on your screen.
All right, and we're back. Thanks for everybody's patience. And like I mentioned, if you're going to be buying a house, give my buddy Aaron a call and give him a shot and support a company that supports fishing. So, but we'll get back to fishing talk.
No questions?
We got questions. Let's take some questions.
Yeah, let's take some questions.
This also is a good opportunity, like the commercials. If you need a refresh on your beverages, that's a good time.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Tacklecraft, one of our favorite painters. He says, Ed, do you use any discontinued baits that you wish were still around today?
Yeah, shortwort.
Shortwort. Yeah, I actually saw it on Instagram. You broke one recently, right? I think.
Yeah.
So if you've got there's a PSA. If you have shortworts that you're no longer using, go to Ed Cowan 5 on Instagram and send him a DM, and he'll help you out.
Yeah, that's sure. I'm probably not even aware. Some of the stuff I have enough supply. I'm probably not even aware it's discontinued.
Nice. And how do you like to fish a shortwort?
Oh, it's just a square bill.
Okay. Hardcover, or does it do well around grass?
Riprap mostly.
Okay.
Mostly riprap. Oh, and I don't think it's discontinued, but it's pretty old school. Is one of my other favorite crankbaits, a 1-.
Mm-hmm.
And Yeah, like the guy that owned the local bait shop told me I was the only one. There's a lake by me that's Shahola Swamp Marsh. To give you an idea what Shahola Swamp Marsh is, it's a swamp, and he says I'm the only person which actually tried to throw a crankbait in that lake.
Nice. Well, a lot of people though will say that it changed, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever, and that they like the old ones and not the newer ones.
Oh, are there new ones? I have some of this stuff. I have so many.
The ones that say 1- like embossed in the side of it are the old ones, and the new ones
that's all
don't.
I have.
Yeah.
But I actually have pretty good supply of those.
Yeah.
Because you lose one to some toothy critter once in a while, but
sure,
it's not like you're fishing riprap with a short word, you get snagged.
Sure. Nick says he's the guy that buys the tackle, and based on the kickback from Omnia, I can retire. So that's appreciated, Nick. And a good segue to remind you that there is an updated code for June down at the bottom of the screen for those that like to shop at Omnia Fishing. So if Ed ever runs out of baits, he can also use that as well. But let's see what else are questions we have here. This is more of a generic question. Justin, I know you asked this earlier. 705 CB for Rapalo Shadow Wrap shads. I don't know. The Shadow Wrap shad, I don't know. Is that different than a shad wrap? I know a shad wrap, I would say the 705 is a little stiff for that. I would go to a 704 power. I can't remember what their Shadow Wrap shad. I think that's a deeper body jerkbait. I think it would probably be okay because I throw jerkbaits quite a bit on the 705. So I think if it's a jerkbait that I'm thinking about from Rapala, it probably would work pretty good. Drop Mint comment earlier that his dad used to fish with Bryan Kerchal on Candlewood.
Yeah, Candlewood is super lake.
I've heard that didn't they put a bunch of grass carp in it, and now it's kind of ruined the lake, and it's went to crap, and it's all muddy and
it's
dirty.
See, a basic lake on Candlewood Lake, if it's lakefront and basically a 1,400 square foot ranch is over $1 million, and a lot of the houses are 5,000-6,000 square feet. So these wealthy people want to live on a swimming pool, so they got these grass carp in there to try to get rid of the milfoil, and when you get rid of the vegetation of the lake, it turns to a mud hole. but the fishing's still real good. We had fished a tournament there. In the spring tournaments, there's guys were catching 23, 20, winning 23, 25 pre-spawn. You catch 23 to 25 pounds of smallmouth to win a team tournament on there.
Yeah, but with the homeowners, right? They went from clear lake, right, crystal clear water with grass.
Yeah.
And now murky looking water with no grass, and they probably weren't quite thinking that's what was going to happen when they put a bunch of grass carp in there.
Yeah, I don't know what they thought was going to happen. They could have, got some what's that stuff that kills grass and weeds that everybody Roundup. They could have got Roundup and nuked their yard and seen what happened. They probably
right.
It was a pretty good idea. The same thing,
So but this is like a recent thing. So I would imagine fishing is going to taper off after a few years of not having grass. But
I don't know. It's it'll probably just go. Candlewood has changed over the years. I fished Candlewood. I fished my first club tournament in Candlewood in the 70s, and way back it was mostly pickerel and small largemouth, and then alewives somehow got in the lake, and the fish got bigger, and they started doing a winter drawdown. They draw it down like 5 to 7 feet in the winter, and firmed up the bottom along the shoreline, and the smallmouth population exploded, and it was real good smallmouth and largemouth. I would imagine with less grass, there'll probably be fewer largemouth and more smallmouth. It's always been a good lake. It's funny how lakes are like that, because New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York all have closed seasons, and Connecticut's open year round. So Candlewood gets absolutely hammered. It has tournaments like 7 days a week in the spring because these other states are closed.
And they're close because it's geographically very tight.
Yep, geographically very tight, and it's the best lake until you get like upstate New York. There's nothing else, it's probably 30 miles from New York City, and there's nothing else within 150 miles from New York City that even.
I didn't realize it was that close to New York City. That's
crazy. Yeah, it's close. It's close to New York City, and it's only 5,400 acres. And so
decent, but not big. I mean, really,
no, it's not big. It's not big, but it's just fantastic. It's always been fantastic. I don't know. I hear that they're taking steps to get rid of the grass carp now. There is another lake close by, Candlewood, this like an 800-acre lake, Mayapack, that they did the same thing. They put the grass carp in, and it turned into strictly smallmouth lake until the grass carp went away and the largemouth are coming back. So I think it'll affect the largemouth more than the smallmouth. I don't know. You'll probably get Paul Mueller around here someday. He'll probably have.
Yeah, try to connect. Paul's really tricky because he, when he's not out on the road, he's guiding.
Oh,
so I've
yeah.
had a hard time. I've talked to him a few times, and it's just like, and he guides late, and they're filleting fish at night, and he's, you know what I mean? Like, he's a busy guy, so it's been tough connecting with him, but we definitely talked about it.
Well, if the fishing falls off on Candlewood, he might not be as booked. You might get him on, but I hope not for his sake.
Yeah,
because it's the only place I fish a couple times a year. When I used to probably like tournament fish like every weekend when I was younger, I would go there quite a bit because they had a lot of the better payoff tournaments. But there really isn't much in the Northeast that is that worthwhile to fish really anymore.
Sure.
It seems like the smaller, there's more small circuits and they get smaller turnouts and they have smaller prizes. There used to be a tournament circuit in New England that was, sponsored by Foxwoods Casino. Lee Bailey, who he made a couple classics. He ran it. It's Indian owned. Foxwoods Casino sponsored it. It was a real good circuit. They gave away a boat at every tournament. The entry fee was like $300. And they fish Candlewood, Hudson River, up into New England. But anymore, there isn't that much
regional.
The only boat I'm fishing for this year is Iconelli's this weekend.
Yeah, he's fishing the Ike Foundation this weekend.
Ike Foundation this weekend. Yeah, he has. I actually he'd have me come as a pro. He used to have it where he'd get people to put up a good size, I think $1,500 to fish with a pro or whatever. And he used to have it on the Delaware River, which is an interesting place. And I used to, run a boat for him. We had on Delaware River. Now he counts on just anglers enter. Moved down to Chesapeake Bay, which most of your audience probably knows about Chesapeake Bay. That's actually where I fished the Classic in '91. Is Chesapeake Bay, and it's pretty good fishing. And he'll probably get his 150 boat full field. I liked it better when I was on the Delaware, and I just went and took a guy that was an NFL player out in one of them. I took a MMA fighter out in another one. I'll just be going with a friend. That's
Who's your partner for the Derby on this weekend?
This guy Dustin Smith. He's a young guy. He's a younger guy that I know.
Is he from up your way?
Yeah. He's a local guy. The guy I fish with. I fish with a lot.
Nice.
I think this is the first team tournament we ever fished because I really don't just I mostly just fish in the club now.
Right.
Fish in the club event. Well, it's an interesting club. It's Five Alive Bassmasters. They've been on Ike Show several times. We have 160 members.
Wow.
Yeah, our club tournaments are bigger than the federation tournaments at this point.
How many boats do you typically get? For...
Early tournaments, well, it's 2 to 1. 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 2 we all fish for the same pot, so it's not a pro-am, but it's not like a draw. You can fish alone, or if they don't pair you with somebody. Our opening tournament, we usually get 60 or more boats, 70 boats. Later in the year, drops down, 30, 40 or so. I think
Still a good
I think
size
we
club
had-
derby.
Yeah. I think the biggest one we had ladies, like just shy of 90 guys fishing in a club tournament on the Delaware River. The Delaware's an interesting place. It's got it's tidal, and the tide changes 7 feet. So the water just rushes in and rushes out, and you can get in big trouble in a hurry.
Right.
As far as getting trapped and stuck and stuff like that.
Yeah, there was some stories from the Elite Series, the guys that had to wait out tides and they were sweating bullets and.
Oh yeah. Oh, I fished. We had a club tournament down on the Upper Bay this past weekend, and I didn't catch anything in practice because I was stuck for 6 hours. I got stuck when the tide was going down, and it was still more than 2 hours from low tide, and so I sat there, let it drop out, let it come back up, and went back and put the boat on the trailer.
There you go.
I ended up winning, so it shows you how much practice means.
Nice. So what? Big Bass Malone wants to know what your PB, largie, and smallie is.
Biggest largemouth I ever caught was a 9 out of Hartwell in practice for a BASS tournament. In the north, I caught an 842. I think it's my profile picture.
Sure.
In a local lake here, and biggest smallie. I'm not 100% sure, but I 5.5 is the biggest one I ever put on a scale.
Okay.
I caught a few in tournaments in that range in the Great Lakes that didn't get weighed for lunker that I never weighed because when the lunkers are 6.5 pounds, if you got a 5.6, nobody cares.
Right.
Except maybe me, but yeah, I don't really like smallmouth fishing that much. I mean they're fun to. I like smallmouth when they. I like the kind of smallmouth that eat spinnerbaits when the wind's blowing. Those are.
Yeah, you'd probably like this. Like my first tournament this year, we fished up on Lake Vermilion, and we were able to catch smallmouth in 3 to 6 feet of water on jerk baits all day on boulders, and power fish them and had a good time. So.
Well, nothing like that 5.5 smallmouth I caught on a spinnerbait. So those are fun because they really plow it. And the Walnut Pawpack is a lake in Pennsylvania that made Bass's top 100 sometime when they're trying to put something from every state. But it's only fair. I have a bit of a reputation of being hard to beat if the weather's bad.
Nice.
Because once the winds start blowing hard on the lake, you catch them on whatever bank the wind's blowing on. If there's never been a fish there ever before, and the wind's blowing hard enough, they'll be there. Because they spend a lot of time in open water following alewives. And I know there's a couple of young guys around here that are pretty hot. That they're pretty good with their live scope. They do well. They made it to that Bass Pro Shop Championship last year and all. So he can catch those ones wandering around following the alewives. I'll either stay shallow or wait for the wind myself.
Nice. South Jersey Fisherman wants to know, do you think they should, I guess the question, do you think they should come back to the Delaware? And I guess the follow-up is do you think they will?
I used to try to encourage, when I was in the Jersey Fed, I used to tell them that when they hosted the divisionals, like the ones you go to all the time, that they should have it on the Delaware River. I would. It's extreme tidal water bass fishing. It's like nothing else I fish a lot of tidal water, Connecticut. I've won tournaments all up and down the East Coast at different levels on tidal water, and it is just tidal water squared. It's and I wish they'd go there. I don't think they'll go there. I don't know why they wouldn't go there. They had at the time, I think they had a record turnout for people.
Right.
As far as marketing and all, it's there's not a. I mean, they had that Elite Series out of Philadelphia. There's not a bigger market in this country where you could have a bass tournament. It doesn't make any sense to me that they don't go back there. My theory is that nobody named VanDam caught a single fish when they were there, and so they'll never go back. I even messaged that the MPFL and told them they should try to get it there. I mean, I think it's a real good place to have a tournament.
So, is it the position of where it is, or is it also because it's small and it funnels hard? Because does the Hudson swing as much, or the other tidal fisheries up north swing as much, or is it?
No, it's funny because you can actually go through the D&C Canal, Delaware Chesapeake Canal, and get from the Delaware to the Chesapeake, and the Chesapeake's tide's only maybe 3 feet.
Right.
And where 2.5-ish, where the Hudson and the Connecticut are more in the 4-foot range, 3.5, 4-foot range. And so of the tidal waters I fish, the Chesapeake has the least tide and the Delaware has the most.
Isn't Delaware 6?
It's 7, 8,
okay.
6 to 8 feet. It's like crazy. It's just the water disappears, and then at high tide there's water everywhere. And it's got a bad reputation. The fishing isn't great, but compared to the Sabine, they call a lot more fish in the Sabine than what they caught in the Delaware. But the size is better on the Delaware. It's not
right.
It's not like the Chesapeake. The size is freaking real
phenomenal.
Yeah, it could take as much as 25, 26 pounds to win Ike's tournament. Post spawn like it is, it probably only take low 20s. But in the Delaware, a 12-pound catch is a good catch. But I've seen there was a 20 caught in a team tournament in Delaware last fall, and 15 in team terms isn't that unheard of there.
Uh-huh.
But it's that's not the worst place in the world. That's the Ohio
right.
River. Everybody prove that.
Or the Illinois River.
Or the Illinois River. Yeah. But,
so AJ wants to know, what do you think of the new format of the Bass Nation? Have you studied it? Do you understand what they're doing, or what are your?
I haven't really kept up because once in a while I think about doing it. I would probably be more inclined if I was going to try to qualify for something. When I first got a boat, I fished the Redman, which is BFL now.
Yep.
And I fished it for 6 years, made 6 regionals. And the first regional I made was on Kerr Regional Classic. And I went down to Kerr, and basically bass living milfoil on docks is what I knew about catching a bass. And there's no
milfoil in Kerr.
No, and very
few docks.
Yeah. In 1984, there was virtually no docks. I didn't have a clue how to catch fish in that silly lake at the time. So I go to these southern reservoirs, for the regionals.
Yeah.
So I never made the All-American. So if I was going to try to do something, I would probably fish the BFL circuit and try to make it All-American if I had.
Or you could. Is there a TBF out where you are?
Yeah.
Because the TBF can get you to the All-American as well.
Yeah. But when I was young, I thought I wanted to be a pro fisherman. I found out it's a lot of hard work and not very glorious, and a terrible way to make a living. So when I got my Bryan Kerchal trophy, and You know what? It really, like, as far as you fish a tournament, there's, as far as the competition and just the satisfaction of when you do well, it doesn't make that much difference if you're fishing, the opens or your club tournament. You go out and you make the right decisions and make a good catch, you do well. And
Sure.
If any kind of tournament fish you're doing, if you win enough money to pay to do it, if it pays for your way and you fish for free, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody know. I mean, Blockett always talks about how old guys can't compete anymore anyway.
Well, I mean, and Blockett is the perfect example of, like, he's figured out a way to be relevant and make a living and not really catch them.
Yeah. It's I watch his thing. I like the nostalgia he has in his thing. I don't know. When he was still trying to fish the big tournaments, and he's in a business with that Johnny Schultz, yeah. And if I was like in a business partner with Johnny Schultz, I would absolutely know how to use that electronics.
I feel like it's almost like a shtick now between them, right? It's like the yin and the yang, and it's like,
yeah.
The thing is, like, Randy comes off as this aw shucks, like, guy, but I think he, at a high level, he's playing chess with YouTube and his videos and all that kind of stuff, right? It's very calculated and scripted. It comes across as very like ho hum and shucks, but I don't think that's the case at all.
Yeah, and I'm always waiting because I know Danny Korea. He roomed with Danny, and Bob Pastic, his other guy that he traveled in the pro circuit, fished the Red Man. Well, I fished it, and I've fished with I know Danny and Bob, so it's like I watch this thing to see what he's going to talk about.
Yeah,
those guys, and also the era of like when I fished all the national championships and a couple classics. Those were all Ray Scott ones. It's like they'll never be, Ray Scott emceeing. I mean, Mercer's great. I like Mercer, but it's not Ray Scott.
He's no Fishburne.
Fishburne's a good guy. He was fishing.
I liked Fish when he was doing it for a while too.
Yeah.
The only tournament that I ever fished that Ray Scott emceed, I fished in a weekend series national championship on Clark's Hill, and that was the one event that I actually got to meet Ray Scott, and he did part of the weigh-in and MC and spoke and things like that. So that's the only event I ever got to fish that Ray was a part of.
Oh, he was amazing. He met you once and he knew who your name was and what you did forever. Like you come back years later and stuff. But yeah, that was Blockett's always talking. That was the heyday, somewhat. I don't know. I mean, it's all relevant and relative or whatever. The kayak thing's pretty wild now.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned you fish Slay Nation, right? Tournaments, which are online virtual tournaments.
Yeah, with the COVID, when he did a bunch of online stuff during COVID, and I was.
Do they still do it, or do they stop doing it?
They stopped doing it.
Okay.
But there's those apps. You can actually go on. There's two of them, Tournament X and Fish Donkey, and there's all kinds of online tournaments there. They have some that are like just for fun, and they have a fee that covers their cost,
Right.
And the CPR, and you can me and a few friends do one, and you catch them. You can catch them on the bank, and compete in a long tournament, So,
I did last year. There was an app called Half a Spot.
Okay.
And they still have the app, but it seems like they're only doing international stuff. But they had like a north and a south, and a kayak and a bank and a boat region. So like I was fishing a lot of these boat north regions, and they were month-long tournaments. And the participation was never great, but like I was just like measuring and documenting the fish I was catching. I wasn't, you know what I mean? Like I was just
Yeah.
at the end of the day, when I go to tournaments, I would just like put my fish on the board before I threw them back, right? Or if I was out practicing, if I caught a good one, I'd put it on the board and log it. And
Yeah.
I think I just about won every one, or I got big bass, and like I'd make money every month just by entering these $25 tournaments, and I won like 3 Abu Garcia combos, maybe like Lee combos, and I just donated those to like high school kids and things like that. So I need to check out some of these other like Fish Donkey and Tourney X to see if there's other more tourneys I can get into that, like, especially these month-long ones. It's like, I'm going to get out 10 times. Like, it's just another way to participate and have fun.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how good some bank fishermen do.
Sure. They got these little sneak holes. I mean, they'll put up 100 inches on you in a hurry.
Yeah. And how hard it is to catch 100 inches in the north too. When I first fished that, I thought a 20-pound bag is 100 inches. That's more like 25 pounds.
Yeah, especially up north. I mean, our fish are built different, right? A 20-incher is
all
of 5 pounds.
Yeah.
Except for maybe this time of year, right? Most other times of year, 20-inchers is 5.5 pounds. So
yeah. And you're actually better off fishing for smallmouth that don't have gobies to eat.
Right.
Because they're long.
Fish those river Susquehanna smallmouth, those long skinny ones.
Because I had a 21.5-inch fish during our club tournament at Candlewood, and I put it on the board before I weighed it in, and it weighed I think 475 or something like that. So
some years ago in Mississippi River, I had a 20 3/4 inch or 21 and change smallmouth, and I don't think it was like 3 3/4 pounds.
Yeah,
it was just that old river like. I mean, when he came up, I thought it was a largemouth because his mouth was so big, but then
Yep, some of those river smallmouth are like the Hudson River smallmouth are long and skinny.
Yeah. Michael Bradley says, "Did you fish that event rolling one on the Hudson?"
Yeah, I watched him win it. That was the first pro tournament I ever fished, and
so his jet boat was just past where you could get, or what?
No, the Hudson. He won it. That was Connecticut River used the jet boat.
Oh, okay.
The Hudson River, he won the Hudson River. About 50 miles south of Catskill, where the tournament launched out of, and I was fishing the same area he was for the first 2 days, and then I was I fished 3 invitationals, 2 on the Hudson and 1 on 1,000 Islands before I won the national championship. So in the 80s, I fished 3 invitationals. Just when they'd come up north, you tried to get in,
right?
And all 3 of them, I fell out of the money the last day because I wasn't that experienced and I didn't know how to fish 3-day tournaments. And at the Hudson, I was fishing the same areas rolling for the first 2 days. And that's how the big willow leaf spinnerbaits, that was the first time anybody that came out, like all these different baits over the years, somebody did well in a pro tournament, and that's how the world found out. And it was the willow leaf spinnerbait. Because I hear rolling casting, it's like, what in the hell's all that clacking? You could hear the spinnerbait blades clacking together, because I was just throwing a spinnerbait with, number 3 and number 4 Colorado or whatever was a standard 1984 spinnerbait, and the 3rd day he disappeared, and I didn't do very well, and he went someplace else for his 3rd day catch and won the tournament, and I fell from the 28th or something I was down to 3 places out of the money, whatever exactly.
You needed a cut back then.
Yeah, if there was that's I don't like the cuts, because I fished in 2007, I went to the classic and was satisfied with my tournament life and stuff, and I worked for this guy, and he was a gambler and a fisherman, and he's bothered. Why don't you fish bigger tournaments? Why don't you fish bigger tournaments? Why don't you fish pro tournaments? And it's like, yeah. So he goes, here's what I'm going to do. I'll pay for everything. give you the week off with pay, and we'll split whatever you win. So that's
that's an offer you can't say no to.
Yeah. So I fished the Stren series, and because he wanted me to get on the FLW, but then it was a construction company in 2008. The what you call it, economy collapsed and he went out of business. But I got to fish all these Stren series on his dime, and made a little money. But I forgot what brought this up, where I was going with this. But what were we talking about?
A cut. You don't like.
Oh, the cut. So anyway, the first year, 2000. So this happened in 2006. We just started out. He wanted to fish the BFL, so I fished the BFL on the weekend. He was paying for it, and the regional classic was a Kerr, and the first day I was in fourth place. It was windy, and I caught my fish on these banks with spinnerbait. Then the second day, it was dead calm, and I dropped to like 8th place. And they were taking 6 for the All-American. They cut the field to 6.
And it blew the final day.
The third day, when I was leaving, driving home, the wind blew like as hard as the wind can blow, and they'd let you still go out, and nobody caught more than 2 fish. It's like, if there was no cut, I'm sure I would have won that tournament. Or at least made that All-American. So I don't really love cuts. And the other thing I found in when I was fishing the invitationals in the early 90s is if you found like the right deal but not really the right thing, if you were fishing the same way the leaders were with the draw tournaments, if nobody would encroach on the guys in the top 10. But if you were fishing the same basic pattern and you were in 40th place, you were getting invaded. So if after a lot of those invitationals after 2 days, if I was like below, like around, they paid to 50. If you were like 40th, I'd end up falling out. And I think anytime I was if I found something that was different but wasn't the right thing to do, you'd end up, everybody'd leave you alone and you'd have it all to yourself, and you'd end up moving up the last day. Like most of the time that I came in the money in the 30s or 40s, I was in like 60th or 70th place going into the final day. And I really wasn't doing the right thing, but it worked well enough that if I had a run of the lake and nobody was trying to do what I was doing, you'd keep catching them.
Yeah, makes sense.
You were close for a reason if they left you alone. One of the funny things was, so one of the earliest invitationals fish was on 1,000 Islands. And this was back when largemouth would win half of them. And I had these fish found in Lake of the Isles. And it was, I think it was either Clun or Houston won that tournament throwing a spinnerbait out in the lake where they had it was like the end of the world out on Ontario in an 18-foot bass boat. So the first day and the first morning, I go in the Lake of the Isles, and I make a pretty good catch, and then the front rolls in, and the fish stop biting. And I know the fish stop biting. I know I'm done. And I weigh in, and I'm in 25th place or whatever the heck it is. And I get my secondary partner, and the guy, first thing my secondary partner says, "Are you fishing in the river or the lake?" Because apparently he'd been on the lake. I said, "In the river, but I'm not. My fish are done. This friend killed him." He says, "I don't care. We're going to your fish." So I fished in the river and dropped to 49th place.
Sure.
Draw the next guy. Guy goes, "Oh, I see you're in the cut. You fishing in the river or the lake?" I said, "The river, but I'm not catching them anymore." That was from the first day. He says, "I don't care. I'm not going out to the lake. We're fishing your fish." And of course, I dropped out like I did all three that I fished in New York, in my early days. But it's 3 days is different than one. But you fish a bunch of divisionals and You get used to that.
Yeah, it's an art for sure. Multi-day tournaments are their own breed.
Yeah.
So you've traveled quite a bit. Let's see. There was a question here. Gators Adventures. He says, "How many states have you fished in? Do you have any idea?"
I think I figured it out. I think it's 23 or so. I forget. The one thing good, and like I saw it was probably Blockett talking about which states have the best, most good fishermen. And it's actually surprising how many guys are on the elites from like New Jersey and Connecticut.
Yeah.
In such small, I mean, the biggest lake in Connecticut is 5,400 acres. And the biggest lake in New Jersey will be, besides the Delaware River, which is on the border, is Lake Apacon. It's like 2,700 acres. And you got, Mike Akinelli and JDP fishing out of Jersey, and when you live around New York City in one of those states, and the seasons and all, like the BFL, when I fished the BFL in the 80s, we'd open on the Potomac, we'd fish Champlain, Thousand Islands, maybe go to Candlewood, Connecticut. You do a lot of traveling, and even those divisional teams, the Northeast was always the biggest division. We covered 13 states, and I fished divisional tournaments in probably 10 of them. So you end up fishing when you live someplace that there's a lot of little lakes and not a lot of big tournament lakes. You end up traveling a lot. So yeah.
I think I fished 17 myself.
Yeah. I think I fished every state on this side of the Mississippi, and most of them that touch the Mississippi on the others, except Rhode Island. Never fished in Rhode Island.
Not much to fish there.
Rhode Island would host their when it was their turn to have divisional, they'd have it on the Connecticut River. They'd host it in Connecticut and stuff like that. And when the few years I fished on a pro circuit, ran me around quite a bit.
Clay, I'm pretty sure most of these invitationals that Ed's talking about were pro on pro.
Right? Yeah, well, pro on pro. Yeah.
So like almost all of your invitational experience was pro on pro. That'd be what, 10, 20 tournaments or whatever.
I think I fished 33.
Okay.
And I think I fished like maybe 6 with FLW.
And that's where you said you fished with KVD and you fished with
Oh, I fished with KVD the day he set the record for the biggest bag at that point. It was first day. It was the first day on San Rayburn Reservoir in Texas. It was a real frustrating tournament for me because I would never pre-fish or anything, and basically I drive to Texas, buy a map when I got there, or drive to Alabama or wherever, and then just wing it. No information. There wasn't a lot of real good sources of information. So we went to Rayburn in Texas, and the thing was like 10 feet above the edge of the woods was 10 feet deep, and it was like the time of the it was the spring, and the fish were obviously spawning. And in practice, I couldn't find a way to get to the shoreline like anywhere, except maybe a couple developed areas that had so many boats it was ridiculous. And I drew out Kevin the first day.
So when you say you didn't practice, like you didn't practice at all, or you just
I didn't pre-fish. No, I just drive to Texas, get there for the first day of practice.
Right. So you'd go there for the official 2 or 3 days of practice.
3 day practice. You
wouldn't pre-practice ahead of time.
No pre-practice. Okay. No. Most times I didn't buy a map till I got there. I just went there and ran around for 3 days. And it was frustrating, the fact that I couldn't find. So I draw Kevin, and he goes into the woods here, and it's like old growth forest with these big trees that you could actually get between. I pulled my drain plug out during practice trying to get to the shoreline, because you couldn't get to the shoreline because the lake was flooded. And he caught like 32.5 pounds, and the biggest 5 fish limit at that point was Ron Sheffield's at like 29.
Wow.
And and he actually should have put it away the first day. He wouldn't. He fishes real fast, and he was intentionally leaving like 5-pound fish. I think saving them. He caught a 10-9 and a 9-10.
Wow.
And it was the first 10-pounder he'd ever seen. Either one of us had ever seen in our life. Neither one of us. He was a kid. This was 1990.
He was like 22 years old or something.
Yeah. Yeah. We didn't know how big these fish were. we were guessing how big the fish were and stuff. And, he had gone down and pre-fished, and he'd found this area where you could actually get around in the woods because of this size trees that lived there. And I was, So that was quite the experience. He's incredible. You knew what.
So did you catch anything behind him?
Yeah, I caught 11 pounds or whatever.
He let you scrap up a few 2-pounders behind him.
Well, I had one on. When he caught this 10-9, he's throwing a floating worm, and this fish took a shot at the floating worm and missed it, and he says, "Oh my God, look at the size of the fish! It's right there. It's on a bed, right?" So he's sitting there playing with this fish on a bed, and I'd won the national bed fishing. Like in 1991, I could bed fish as good as anybody. So it's like he's trying to catch this 10 ounce bed, and I said, "Kevin, that gets it isn't going to bother that big fish." He goes, "Oh yeah, what do you think I should do?" I said, "Throw a spook past that thing." So he picks up a spook and throws it past this fish on the bed about 3 times. And the third time that this monster follows the spook right to the boat, goes back to bed, and starts spinning in circles. So he picks up that floating worm again on the spin rod, throws it in there, and the thing just eats it. And he sets the hook and lets go of the reel handle. And the reel handle just spinning around, and there's a row of bubbles going through the woods. and he throws a trolling motor high and runs into a tree. He says, "Get me to that fish." And we get over there, and the fish is basically dead, and he picks it up and puts it in a live well. So we go down a little further, and he sees another monster. He says, "I'm not making that mistake again." And he picks up his bait casting rod with a freaking sluggo and throws a sluggo in there, on 17-pound test, and catches it 9-10. And then we go down a little further, and I get a big one, nailed my freaking floating worm, and I set the hook and let go of the reel handle. And the reel handle's spinning around, and he's screaming, "It's not hooked! It's not hooked! You didn't set the hook." And the damn thing, I hadn't set the hook, I guess, because it just came off. I mean, he was more aware of what was going on with my lure than I was. So he says, "Oh, that was with like 9 pounds." Then the next day in the weigh-in line, he comes up with me, says, "Oh, my partner had that fish up to the boat that you lost. I think it's like 13 pounds.
Jesus.
But they started dropping the water, and he ended up finishing third in that tournament. He didn't have a very good third day. And the first day the fish were there, he could have caught 35 or 36 pounds and had enough to win the tournament.
Or maybe 40 if he catches the 13.
Yeah. Well, I blew that fish. But that was the biggest fish I ever hooked. But
it's a good story.
But it's just, and I think he's got like total recall. His hand-eye coordination is like, he can cast further and more accurately than anybody I ever been in a boat with. You're getting bites. He's telling you to set the hook. But he's quite the guy. But even
did you ever fish with like Nixon or Brower or?
I fished with Shaw several times because matter of fact, Shaw made me stop. I bet Shaw $1 I knew Shaw. A couple of my friends I knew Shaw from like sports shows, and a friend of mine would go down to Florida and go fishing with him in the 80s. So when I started, the only guy I really knew was Shaw, and I bet him $1 at the Classic, and I got his dollar. I got that one signed Lucky. Okay, and then we went to the Illinois River, and Illinois River. The first day I drew who's the guy that dropped the fish that lost the Classic by dropping
Bitter?
the fish?
Jim Bitter.
Jim Bitter. I drove Jim Bitter the first day at the Mississippi, at the Illinois River, and I it's like a draw tournament where you got to decide whose boat you're going to use. So I tell them, how my practice went, just what I got. And I said, listen, you totally deserve my respect. You tell me what you think we ought to do. He says, we ought to take your boat and go to your fish because I got nothing like that. So I was in 9th place the first day. And then the second day I went back to my fish and did okay. And I moved up to 6th. And the third day I blew my motor and didn't weigh in. So I ended up, but the fishing was really bad. So I think it's probably on the wall here someplace. I think it's 19th. There, 19th.
So you took out of Peoria, and like, where were you running to? Like way up north, way south?
The Mississippi River one lock up.
So you were running from the Illinois River to Mississippi?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a haul, especially in the boat back then.
Yeah. And that red boat.
Yeah. You got any great stories about I guess when you drew KVD, did you have a discussion on whose boat, or did you have any good stories about boat discussions with any of these guys?
Well, you know what? The draw tournament, there's a lot of talk these days about how much there's respect between the anglers and stuff, and draw tournaments were good for that because a lot went on reputation. It's like if you had a good reputation, then it would be in a good situation. Yeah. Like I said, Bitter freaking rode with me and went to my fish as his call the very first day I even fished one of those tournaments. And now when I drew George Cochran, who was one of the 3 that I named as just exceptional. I drew George Cochran at the next time I went to Rayburn, and we talked about our stuff, and we both had the same pattern, and he was fishing close to the ramp, and I was fishing far from the ramp. And this comes full circle with a lot of some of the other stuff we dealt with. So it's like I said, well, George, we might as well just, you deserve my respect anyway. So I would let you. It would be your call, but we're doing the same thing. We might as well just take your boat and go to your fish because we're doing the same thing, So we go out there, and it was pre-spawn. The water temperature had just hit 60 degrees during practice, and the last day of practice, the spinnerbait bite was on. I mean, it was like easy. You catch as many as you want out of like willows and buckbrush with spinnerbait. And the first day of the tournament, there was no front or anything. Nothing seemed to have changed. And we're out there and we're fishing for 5 minutes. 5 minutes we're fishing. And Cochran goes, something's wrong. This isn't working anymore. We're there for 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, he's putting a spinnerbait back in the rod box and pulling out a wacky worm. And we ended up catching like 60, 80 fish on a wacky worm. And but they weren't the right fish because that's I think Guy Ecker won that tournament on the red rattle trap. So then the second day, and you'd always flip with you'd always end up with getting the guys in the boat in front of you or behind you. You get one of them the next second day, and the other one the third day.
Right. So you
So
kind of
the
knew who you were gonna. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second day, I whoever I drew, me and George were both in the 30s, maybe, and we both had decent catches.
Mediocre.
But not,
Yeah.
yeah, mediocre catches, mediocre middle of the money. I think my second day partner was indifferent or whatever, because I think
He had a bad first day, so he was like, whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever. So I go out the second day and I weighed in another limit about the same as the first day and stayed around where I was. And George only weighed in 4 fish. It's like, that's odd. But the second day they got tougher to catch. You had to like dead stick. I was whacking worm and a cream worm. This is pre-Senko, This is 10 years before Senko came out. And you had to let it sit there a long time. But we caught so many the day before. They were fresh fish because we'd fished nothing but his fish. I went up to my fish, and it's like I knew just you could look across these buck brushes. Oh, there's one there. You throw it in there. You sit there and wait for them to eat. So then the third day, I pulled George's second day partner, and I tell the guy, it's like, yeah, he's out there. He's like freaking 200th place, and he's there with his quarter in his hand. I said, listen, buddy, you let me start on my fish, we can use your boat. Okay. So we take his boat, we go to my fish. It takes me like 2 hours to catch a limit. And this guy's like practically shaking, Oh, and I tell him to bring a spinner rod. He says, oh, I don't even own a spinner rod. This guy's practically shaking. So it's like we're 2 hours in. I have a limit. I'm in the money. I know I'm not going to win. I'm just catching average fish. I said, listen, there's something you want to do. Go ahead. Go do it. I'm fine. And he's trying to throw a spinnerbait still. So that's the difference between a great angler. Cochran knew in 5 minutes that wasn't the thing to do anymore.
And this guy's 3 days in, still throwing the spinnerbait.
It's 3 days. And I after a while, he figured out where I was catching the fish, and he'd throw his spinnerbait like 20 times, and he'd move on, and I'd ask him if he was done, and he'd grunt, and I'd throw my freaking wacky worm over there and catch the fish all day long. But yeah, so, but the boat, I never really had a big issue with.
So when you drew George Cochran, right? Yep. You started on his fish, you're catching them. Did you take the front at any point?
No.
Or because you guys are both catching them?
Yeah.
But like you had the option, right, to take the trolling motor and go to your fish
the option.
halfway.
Yeah, the option. You know what? I got really good strategy wise. I take it you haven't fished a lot of draw tournaments.
No, actually I did a lot. Because our state tournaments were draw up until 2016, and then obviously all the regionals that I made up until 2016, which was quite a few, those were all draw. So there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. So I'm just curious at the tour level, invitational level, how that went.
Well, if I drew, I got on the TV show. If you look up Kerr Lake,
Lynn Dollar.
Oh, let me look what year it is. Yeah, you look at a dollar thing. I could find out on the wall there. Nope, that was 7th. That wasn't the one. What year is that? Oh, 94. 94. I drew out Zell Rowland the third day, and he walked up to me and says, "You're riding," and that was because he was in third place going into the tournament, and I going into the last day, and I was in 40th. And if you drew somebody up in the top 10 and you weren't like 11th place, you just deferred to them. That was just the proper thing to do. And I stayed in the money. I moved up a little bit. I got on the TV show, Lynn Dollar there, when I caught a big fish. Zell lent me a popper, which I wish I got to keep because the thing worked better than any popper I've ever thrown before or since. And but there was unwritten rules. Now, as far as other draw tournaments, my strategy, you go away or something? Oh, there you go. You're showing me. Cool.
This guy?
Yeah, there I am. Yeah, there I am. Zill is not happy right now. Yep. Yeah, you usually try to pick your fish up for each other.
It looks like he's trying to throw it off there for a second.
Well, you know what? He
Well,
would.
the thing is, pros aren't used to landing other people's fish. They're not very good at it.
Oh, back then they would. Yeah. Oh, it was pretty early in the no net time, and that was a whole nightmare in itself. None of us knew how to land them that good back then. None of. But as far as other draw tournaments, my practice was always to well, at the local level, I did well enough that very seldom anybody.
So like at the state level, like me, right? Like once you get 2-3 divisionals under your belt, like draw Ed or they draw Rich, and they're like, "Well, yeah, where are we going? Like, what are you going to show me?"
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. Well, I just found the best practice is if there was a guy that wanted, it was obvious that he wanted to go as fish, give him the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You give him the morning because two things are going to happen. One thing is his stuff isn't any good, and he's going to give up in 2 hours, and you're going to get 6. The other thing
you're going to catch him off his spot, and then you don't have to touch yours.
Yeah, I drew a guy someplace once that we're about an hour and a half in, and he tells me that we can go to your fish, and it's like no, we can't. This is better than anything I got. We're staying here.
You're like, I'll go pre-fishing if you want me to just like go practice. I'll use the rest of the day to go practice. But
I told him we're not going anywhere. and stuff. But yeah, I like the draw format pretty well. I mean, once in a while you have only one time I ever remember that it really hurt me because a guy insisted he wanted half his time, and I had a real good fish, and they were like an hour run, and in the tidal water, like when they were going to hit, it was like the middle of the day. It was like
so he was adamant he needed to go there, even though it was going to be the wrong tide.
He was adamant that he wanted half his day, even though, and so I just couldn't go to my where I wanted.
Right, you didn't have time to like fish your fish and run because the wrong direction. He was going the wrong direction and it wasn't give you enough time. And
I mean, I did okay in the tournament, but I went the next day and caught like 24 pounders off the place. So, but
no, it affects the way you practice. I mean, like these multi-day tournaments, these regionals and state tournaments, when it's a draw tournament, and some lakes it doesn't matter, right? Like some of these, like if you're fishing Candlewood, you can run back and forth across the lake 10 times during the day.
Yeah.
But let's say you're on Champlain, right? You almost have to practice tie and the upper lake both because you don't know where your partner is going to want to go. And if he's adamant he wants to go to tie, right, you almost have to have fish down there that you can go to. I mean,
no, if it's a draw tournament, you're entitled to half the day from where the tournament launches out of.
I know, but like,
well, if you don't want to go to tie, you don't go to tie.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you kind of have to practice in mind that with flexibility, right? You can't be so locked in, like, I'm only going here, because if he wants to go there, then you both end up driving 2 hours and neither one of you fishes at all, right? So it's like, it's a whole.
Yeah, I've never actually had that happen, but
right. But in theory, at the regional level, it was definitely much more. At the state tournament, I could get away with more based on reputation and performance. But when you start drawing guys from other states, like when we draw guys from Wisconsin, it was very cutthroat between Minnesota and Wisconsin. Like, you could be absolutely hammering them, and you could be doing really well in the tournament. And that whole team rivalry, they're like, I'm taking my 4 hours regardless of who you are, what you're doing, like to the minute. Like he's like, you got 7 minutes left, and I need to be.
That's why I was giving the lake. I always give them the morning. I've never had anybody hold me away from fish for the full 4 hours if they didn't have anything.
Right. But I'm just
the other thing is I'm no good at fishing early in the morning. I'm a flipper. A lot of my I don't go fishing early in the morning. Like I worked until COVID hit. I was working corrections. I'd be 4 on and 2 off, so I'd work during the week. Be off during the week a lot, and I wouldn't go fishing until my wife left for work.
Sure.
So I have no idea how to catch a fish before 9 o'clock in the morning anyway. So
getting up before the sunrise is overrated.
yeah, oh yeah, that's the one. That's the best thing that Block had ever said was. He said, "What's wrong with tournaments?" He said they start too early.
Well, I feel like the BPT, they do some late starts. Like
Yeah.
they'll sometimes start at 10.
Since our club is 5 Alive, I tell our tournament director we should change the name to 9 to 5 and fish those hours.
Yeah, I fish a TBF team circuit here, and they never start before 7.
Yeah.
And the old E50s, didn't they start at they went from 10 to 6?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been, you would have been dominant in the E50s, Ed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the real flippers were around those days.
Sure.
That's one thing when you fish. You see guys that have similar philosophies to how you fish during tournaments, and then some guys you never see. Like I know where Biffle and Brower fished a lot of times because I'd see them a lot.
Right.
And I don't think I ever saw Clun fishing. I don't remember some guy. It's just funny. You just end up with being around the same guys in every tournament when you fish those big tournaments. Or anyway.
And that happens at the local level too, right?
Yeah, local level too. Yeah.
You got those guys like back when Josh Douglas, Elite Series Angler, we used to fish the weekend series, and I wouldn't see him a lot in practice, but sure as heck during the tournament, we'd be trying to be fighting over the same stretches all the time because we fished the same. We looked at the water the same.
Yeah. The funny thing is these days, I've run an 18-foot 150 boat from 1984 to present, and now that the standard tournament rig is 21-foot 250, I don't seem to see as many people.
Sure.
There are people.
You went from being the standard to the bare minimum.
Yeah. And guys just don't fish shallow effectively anymore that much. It's not. I mean, you fish in the Mississippi River. There's, I'm sure, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I mean, I fished a big tournament on Lake Apacon, 2,700 acre Lake Apacon in New Jersey. I never fished near another boat. It's like, how can you not fish near anybody in 27? People don't. The shallow water fishing's becoming like a lost art, I think. And I don't know. I mean, there's some guys that are real successful. The live scoping has opened up. It's real effective to fish offshore, but over the years, I've seen a lot of some. It seems like anytime a hot offshore thing comes along, it's good for just a little while.
Right.
It seems you're too exposed out there. Everybody can see what you're doing. You're fishing down the bank. Somebody sees you, on a bank, and you fished 5 miles of bank this day. On that day,
they don't know what 500 stretching went down on.
Yeah, they don't know that 100 feet they saw you on might have been just between the fish.
You might have just been eating a sandwich to the next little stretch.
Yeah.
You were just throwing a buzzbait trying to get to the next clump or the next.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of electric motor only lakes in the area I live.
Right.
In the summer, fishing for pleasure, I don't want to be around jet skis. I spend a lot of time fishing. Just about every lake in this area that's electric only has a ramp, and they allow you to have the motor on the boat. You just can't use it. So,
yep.
And then once you do a lot of electric motor fishing, you find out just how many fish you catch on nothing.
Right. Just throwing a swim jig or a buzzbait. Yeah, between spots Yeah,
you just fish what's appropriate for the cover. I mean, I've seen even some of these studies that they tracking fish, how a lot of lot of fish are on like a single piece of cover on a flat, not near any kind of depth change,
Mhm.
which would make the 360 nice if it didn't pick up all the weeds.
Yeah.
Any more
Aaron
questions?
says Bill Alexander says hi.
Oh, Billy's. I was on a bunch of state teams with him. He's a
Nice.
great. You know who he is?
Doesn't ring a bell for me, but I'm not up from
He,
your area. So
Yeah, he when Roland won the tournament on the Connecticut River, the Pro-Am Bass tournament, he won the amateur division.
Mm.
He was on a bunch of state teams, I believe. I think he's been to the national championship. He makes a great hair jig. MTO baits. He
okay,
makes a great hair
like
jig.
the smally little tiny hair jig or the big fluffy?
Not the structure, not the basically striper. I think he must. If he's on there, tell him to put up his. I hear he's up on like Oneida Lake, and I think he's opening a sports shop up there. And I believe he still makes these the hair jigs. He fishes a lot different than me. He fishes real.
Blackrock says he's the mutant flea guy. Ties up a little mutant flea jig.
Yeah. He makes a good jig.
Aaron says he holds the New York record for most state teams.
Oh, he very well probably does. Yeah, I think he qualified. What's it say? Like
Terry Battisti says, "Good to see you, Ed."
Oh, cool. Yeah. I've been. He's got.
Bass Fishing Archives. Yep.
Oh yeah, I saw you had him on just recently.
Yep,
that was cool. The stories about those records is fascinating. I'm surprised they don't have more subscribers. I'm sure they will in time.
It's all about I told them they got great content. It's all about the packaging. They just need to fine tune their thumbnails and titles, and that's what will drive the traffic.
Yeah. They just gotta do like block it and put something controversial up all the time.
I told him you gotta study guys like Blockit and Bass Fishing Head HQ, but then you have to do it in a way that you're comfortable and make it your own.
Yeah,
right? Something that you can. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be as clickbaity as Randy Blockit and some of these other people, but you have to do it in a way that gets people. You got to stop the scroll, is what I say. Like people are just going through YouTube. You got to get them to look at it, and then right. So it's like I know people say they hate clickbait, but the people that say they hate clickbait are the ones scrolling by your just mundane titles and thumbnails. So
what do you think of this selling waypoints thing?
The fishingtips.com.
Yeah.
So I've had Austin on.
Okay.
I had him on before when he was teasing it, and then I had him on afterwards. I think it's an interesting concept. I signed up for it. I put a pond tip out there from Indiana.
Okay.
I don't know. I definitely could make listings, but I just don't know. I don't know. I'm in the middle somewhere. I totally like when I hear Austin talk about it, I totally get it. And it makes sense, especially for him, right? Like, but I don't know if I'm comfortable selling my tournament, even though I put them out there I don't hide much on my YouTube videos. Like I'm very transparent about where I'm fishing, how I'm fishing in tournaments. And I know that's probably affected me. I've seen like areas of lakes where I've done really well on stretches. Now those stretches of lakes aren't as good as they used to be. Right. And I've had to like readapt and do things. So I don't know if it's something that I would do, but I'm not against people that are for it. And I also am not against people for the most part that want to do it for the right reasons. I don't think I'm in support of like tournament anglers buying stuff off to use in tournaments.
Yeah.
But if it's a dad taking his kid out or his dad out and they just want a shortcut and get to success so they can have a good time, I can totally get on board with that, right? It's not that much different than hiring a guide. I also don't think it's okay to hire guides going to tournaments, right? So it's that same mentality. I think in fun fishing and recreational fishing, I think it's good. I don't like to see it in tournament fishing. Maybe that's a good way to look at it for me.
Yeah, I signed up for myself and I have one tip up and it's native brook trout fly fishing.
Yeah.
Because I I hadn't trout fished. I'm like Trout Central here. I'm,
Mhm.
about 30 miles from like Junction Pool and these famous Lee Wolf spots and stuff. And I used to ice fish in the winter, and we just don't get safe ice anymore. So I
Right.
started fooling. You can open water fish these little streams all winter,
Mhm.
and so I started winter. And the toughest thing is finding out how to access this stuff and what's worth to going to. And so that's why I think I think it'll sell. It's mostly marketing. It'll sell towards tournament anglers that are looking for a shortcut, and shortcuts never work. And if that's what you got to do, it's you're you're not going to be successful. But I think for bank angler, I find bank anglers are very secretive,
Yeah.
and figuring
Probably
out how
more
to
so than boat anglers, honestly.
they are. So I'm going to put some more bank type and small water stuff up on it and see if I. I wish their minimum was lower. I don't know that that information's worth $25 to somebody.
I thought the one I posted was only 10.
Yeah, but I think they upped the minimum to 25
Okay.
now. Yeah, yeah. So I would put at, at $10. I'd put up a basic tip on every freaking pond around here because
Sure.
it's not in every little stream and things like that.
And that makes sense, right? Like, I mean, you got a single mom, single dad, a high school kid, like $10 help them understand where they can go catch fish. Like that's
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know. But I
I
probably
mean
would do
there's
that for free, honestly. Like
yeah,
if some kid slid into my IG Instagram and was like, "Hey, I know you live around here. Where can I go catch?" I would tell them I wouldn't charge them 10. You know what I mean?
oh
So
yeah, you do. I'd absolutely do it for free too. But
yeah,
somebody that's just searching the
right,
internet for something that doesn't know you can't do for free. There's a little there's this one creek that we fish in the winter. It took me 3 years to figure out how to get to where it was worth fishing.
right.
So and then actually I contacted somebody that had posted some pictures on Fishbrain, I think.
Sure.
It's like I heard this thing had fish in it and and he says, "Oh yeah, you park at this lot and then because where the access in the road, it's just a little tiny creek and it's spread out to a marsh. It's a creek that would be within the 10-foot banks. It's 100 feet wide there because it's just a big marsh. So you got to park there and you got to walk down through the woods until it becomes a creek again, and that's where you catch them.
Hmm.
But I'd hike 3 or 4 places back into the woods of this thing and never found anything worth fishing. And once somebody told me what to do, yeah, went down there and caught a bunch of little, native brook trout in February when you're not going
Sure.
to be catching a bass or, and it's it's good exercise to go walk around. Uh, I don't mind walking around the woods in the winter. We got a lot of ticks around here and bears,
Yeah.
and they're hibernating.
Same. Yeah.
That's not really, January, February. That's not really an issue. So, but I know that was a controversial topic. I figure bring it up for a second. So you're signed up too. So I bet you there's a lot more contributors and customers.
Yeah, I signed up and I just don't. I haven't really been back on it since then. I've paused and thought about some of my fishing trips out there. I mean, this year, and I was like, do I want to make a tip? And I keep landing on I don't want to make a tip, and I don't want to I don't know.
Yeah, I just wish I had more time. I'm intending to put a bunch of tips about non-tournament type waters. There's a bunch of little lakes around here, and my favorite lake's always the next one I'm going to fish.
I've been trying to fish a lot of new waters this year. I fished a new section of the Mississippi River I've never been on. I've fished like 3 or 4 new lakes for the first time this year, and and I guess I put up an Omni report, which is more generic, right? Like, hey, like this was the it's not giving away points, GPS points, but it's telling like what was the pattern, what was the water temp, what were the lures. So
Yeah, bank and small border anglers don't have GPS.
right,
They want to know. It's like you can launch, like a small lake around some of these lakes you can launch your bass boat, and some of them are only suitable for kayaks.
Right.
So that's a valuable thing to know up front, and when you're talking about swamp fishing where you're frog fishing, that's not a lot of GPS points, not on a smaller water. I mean, and all like that. But I don't know. That's one of those. There's a lot. Oh, so what do you think about Keith's thing?
Poche.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I have no issue with the way that Keith approaches. Like, I like the idea of a small boat. I like the idea of getting into sneaky places and things like that. What I don't like about Keith is he's constantly living in the gray area, right? Like, he's constantly, like, he could have just called the tournament director before he jumped that dam, like, I don't know, like, and then it sounds like there's a bunch of stuff being talked about and videos surfacing from the Sabine with him casting over a fence that had a no fishing sign on it. So for the most part, I like the idea of like jumping beaver dams, small boat, like doing stuff and going the extra mile. But on the flip side, I feel like Keith lives in this like a little too far gray area where he's like almost pushing the rules a little too far. And to some degree, I think he's almost doing it to live in the controversy and get the limelight. So like, I'm 90% on board with Keith Poche, but 10% of me thinks he's kind of almost motivated for the wrong reasons and taking it a little, like, just one step too far in the gray area. I don't know.
That might be. I just a lot of the comments I've seen about it, I'm surprised. I don't think a lot of people have done anything even remotely. Like the thing on the Red River, he did a video about how him, going into that place they went on the Red River. Like, to me, that wasn't.
Yeah.
tough.
So, but
Like,
what he showed in the video, but there was another section, from what I understand, where he pre-laid a rope.
yeah. Oh,
and then he was using the winch
Yeah.
for that section, which he didn't show in his video, which then they now changed the rules in the opens to clearly make that not.
Yeah,
applicable.
no, you definitely can't winch. But like some of the stuff, I just think, from the comments that a lot of people haven't even done anything remotely. Like,
I mean, I've definitely like scraped my cowling. I've definitely pulled the drain plug in my old boat, taken my windshields off to get under culverts and think, you know what I mean? Like laid down and pulled my bass boat into, you know what I mean? Like, or ran extremely shallow, like water you couldn't idle through that you had to run.
Yeah.
I mean, like blown sandbars. And I mean, I've definitely done stuff like that in the Mississippi River.
Yeah, that was a particular thing. Like, I saw Swindle saying, "Oh, if the boat can't float," you know as well as I that a boat will run a lot less water than it'll float in.
Yeah,
and that's if the boat's got to float, that like eliminates half the tidal water. You can blow over sandbars and all like that. And I don't think a lot of people know what. I think part of I think it was more common in the past that guys would do more extreme things because the boats were smaller, lighter, and less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Your standard glass boat, because in '93 that Brower, Parker, and Grigsby all jumped an earthen dam that was bigger than what Poche went over with a Ranger boat. Because the '93 Super Bass tournament on the Illinois River. Google it and then read into what happened. So if you couldn't go over dry land, they would have made it against the rules at that point.
Right. Well, and I guess, I mean, like, to some degree, it's not fair to, like, the rules probably have morphed since 1993 in the, you know what I mean?
Well,
so, like,
the private water came out of that because they were doing it into a private private water, and that,
which is crazy how much private water, like how much all these duck hunting sloughs got. Like, the Illinois River used to be a really good fishery until they basically, all these guys diked off their own ponds. It's crazy. Like, you look at Google Maps on how much water is adjacent to the river that you can't get into. That's just
plenty. Yeah, and it was Oh, I have kind of a semi-interesting story, which is
Sure.
funny. So now we got the Google Earth, that's one thing, like
It's fun.
valuable tools. I don't fish any place before I look at Google Earth. You can learn so much just looking at, you know.
Saves you gas, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I was on the fishing a club tournament on Delaware River, and uh, in the fall, I guess it was, and there was this little pond off the back of this creek that I'd fished in a federation tournament 30 years ago, and I and I run up this creek, and I'm going up and up and up, and it's like finally a stop, and it's like I pulled up my phone and put on Google Earth because it's like I must have passed it or something, and it was still another mile up. So somehow I got to this pond off a road map 30 years ago because there was no map chip, there was no freaking
Right.
Google Earth. I saw this pond on a road map and got to it, in the 90s, and I had trouble getting into it with the more modern equipment of today. So it's pretty amazing what we found back there and just how much easier the stuff is today. The first time, it was actually one of the first time I ever used it. Before you could just look up Google Earth, you could get those satellite maps off a Terra server.
Right.
And when I made a national championship on the Red River in maybe it's 2001, 2002, something like that. I think it's about 2002. We tore the boats up pretty good in that. I printed out I went on Terra server and printed out the whole place, and that Red River is like real murky, and every place the fish was the clear water, which just looks black on a satellite map, and it sticks out like a sore thumb and stuff. So that's a real good tool, and it just amazes me how where we went on road maps and compasses back with no cell phone. It's like I know.
I actually spent some time this weekend looking at stuff, and I found some areas that looked like they had dark water on the river, and I got close to it, and I don't know. Like, I almost wish I had a 10-foot or 8-foot kayak strapped to the back of my Camus, so I could have just wrapped her down and then like went into this pond and checked it out to see because could have I blown in there? Probably, but I didn't know if I'd be blown into like 6 inches of water or 6 feet of water. You know what I mean? Like, and if I could have just had a kayak, I could just and then I was like, all right, it's worth trying. But
yeah, that's what Shaw told me about that Super Bass tournament, Illinois tournament. That was the scariest thing, whether you get back out after you ran this Ranger boat over the top of because that was like a showcase tournament. So,
right.
You think Hank Parker, who was, I think that Super Bass, I think it was an invitation tournament, was past the time he'd retire. So you think Hank Parker,
it was like the they call it the All-Star or the Superstar or the Super Bass or something.
Super Bass. Yep, it was Super Bass. And so Hank Parker, the NASCAR driver, wasn't going to take somebody else's boat and jump over something like the movies. It's pretty amazing what Ranger did back there with those. Even the one that Bryan won on the Arkansas River, you could tell who was. There was this coal, I think coal pile. It was like a strip pit that most of the guys were fishing in, and I started in there each day, but I had another spot that I would leave and go. But it was like a back channel. It was off a back channel off the river, and basically you had to run this channel and like take a hard turn and jump over the sandbar to get into freaking into this pit. And you go to the boatyard, and you could see how much paint was on the lower unit. You could tell if people were catching any fish or not. Because any boat that had any paint left on the lower unit, the guy wasn't catching any fish. And by the end of the tournament, like 2/3 of the boats were fishing. Probably half the field was fishing in that backwater that Bryan won that thing in. And
paint's cheap, right?
Yeah, and the one day, the one guy was, I think I delaminated the hull. They had the depth finder glassed into the hull, and my depth finder didn't work after practice at all in that thing. And but the one day there was a guy that didn't make it, and he was stuck in these boats that were freaking
going right by him, just jumping over.
Yeah, you stop, you're done. There was a boat stuck in the freaking mouth of it. And we're all like, and then a couple guys figure out you actually get in it from the other side, so we're coming from both directions. It was, we had a good time. So,
I fished a tournament on the Mississippi River out of Pool 4, and they almost always take off the bottom of the pool, which is Wabasha, Mississippi River. But they had a tournament that took out of the top in Red Wing, just above what they call the Wisconsin Channel. And it was kind of a low water spring, and the sandbars had shifted in that channel, and it was kind of a foggy morning, but not so foggy they didn't let us go. And most of the people just went left and started blowing down. I think a lot of people were following other people because they heard about the Wisconsin Channel, but they didn't really know what they were doing.
Yep.
And the sandbar went across almost the whole thing, except for like a boat and a half width on the left and a boat and a half width on the right. And so some people didn't realize that. And all of a sudden people just started piling up on the sandbar left and right in the center of the river. And it was just like all of a sudden I think one person, what happened was somebody got nervous and shut down instead of blowing it. And then somebody had to peel off. Right. And then like all of a sudden there's just boats piled up on it, like sitting like, out of 45, which knows you're like,
the
like just
joys of
mayhem. And by the time I got there, like boat 30, people were slowing down enough that like the gig was up and there was 6 boats on the sand already. And it was just like,
but those are the memorable ones.
Yeah. That was actually Josh Douglas's first weekend series win, his first big win ever. Kind of got him started.
Yeah. Yeah. You always know the guys from your area. It's always a big thing. Oh, well, there are more questions. Well, you run these things.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually till we feel like we're done. I don't know. I did see Critical Gravy said, please do a part 2. This is gold. Thanks for the stream.
Oh, cool.
So I think people are enjoying it. What are your thoughts on Cayuga and MLF fishing there during the catch and release? You think that's a good idea? Spawn? Like what's
I don't think it's a great idea. I don't
like just bed fishing or fishing during the catch and release or
well, it used to be New York. You weren't even supposed to fish out of season, and then they made it a catch and release season. Now, New Jersey has a catch and release season just like that, and Pennsylvania has a catch and release season. So they all have catch and release seasons now. But Pennsylvania doesn't allow paper tournaments, so you can't even have a tournament during off season. And I don't know. I watched a little bit today. The fishing's fantastic. I knew it was going to be fantastic, but it's like you got a bunch of pros going up there fishing what's essentially out of season for the easiest fish in the world to catch. I don't.
Yeah.
I'd rather see them on the Delaware River. I mean, to me, the promoters like these big weight tournaments, and your average guy has to like so when I fished the tournament on Philly, we're on the bus, and who was it? One of the pros, probably better off not naming his name, said, if I lived here, I wouldn't fish here. I would go to Lake Erie. Well, Lake Erie's 3 hours away. If you worked at the
fish after work, you only got
the supermarket in Philadelphia, you're not going to Lake Erie to fish. You're fishing the Ohio River. That's what you got to fish. Most people don't have fantastic fishing, and I don't think the pros necessarily need to go to the best bodies of water in the world every time, and to go to the best body of the world essentially out of season to catch the easiest fish you could possibly catch. I don't doesn't doesn't I don't like it that much. I love to fish for a fish on a bed. I don't think it's a real issue. I just to potentially take the best fishermen in the world and have them try to catch naive smallmouth in the north during the spawn out of season doesn't seem to be much of a
just to put up big numbers, right? Just to
say
that DVD caught 28 pounds, right? But
which is actually the team tournaments up there. This
30s,
they have
30s.
Yeah, none of them are in the 30s. What's wrong with those guys? Although Cayuga's the smallmouth used to. I don't know if it. I've fished it quite a bit over the years, and it's not doesn't have that good a smallmouth population, but the gobies got in there now, so they grew monstrous. And the only time you can really make that good a catch, dependently catch good catches of smallmouth is while they're spawning.
Although Dustin Cannell won, was it last year or the year before on smallies? So
yeah, and well, it's changed. All those,
and that's much more like what Cannell did last year or 2 years ago, fishing in early summer. Much more impressive than what they're doing.
Oh yeah, right, it's
now.
like no, Cannell was really impressive what he did up there. And when the body of water is that good, now if they want to fish for spawning smallmouth like that, that's maybe when they should go to the Ohio River so somebody catches something.
Yeah.
I
kind of like. I like this. I mean, I enjoyed the Sabine. I thought that was interesting. I actually, I think the Sabine will be much more interesting for me, more interesting to watch than the St. Lawrence River is going to be in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
But other people don't feel that. Some people like the shock and awe and want to see the fish catches. Like everybody's different, but
and bass aren't that easy to catch. I mean, well, I don't know. You live pretty far north where they're fishing real good around you. Yeah, the fishing in northeast Pennsylvania and northern New Jersey, the fishing ain't that great. So
my fishing is more like upstate New York.
I have real good fishing 3-4 hours away. Got that upstate.
No, but I mean, we have like sections of the Mississippi River here, and some of our metro lakes being right next to Minneapolis, they get pounded. Like Minnetonka can be very, very challenging. I mean, it's a very good lake, but it can be very challenging because those fish are very pressured. So we have a mix. Like if I want to drive half an hour, I can be in like really stupid fish, catch them really good, and then I can also be in like some pretty high pressured situations. So it's a pretty good mix.
Yeah. But to send, the best fishermen to the best waters at the easiest time is not that interesting to watch for me. But, and I'm also afraid that if they overdo that, they might change the rules again.
I had some people in my it's like I kind of talked about it in my fantasy video for the BPT, and there's some people from New York saying that like the what do you call your New York DMC or what DEC or whatever that they didn't allow a permit. It was just the township that brought them in, and so now the DEC is pissed and they're considering changing some of the rules so that can't happen again.
Yeah, see, that's just what I was worried about.
Yeah, which means like, what if they screw it up for you guys now and then they like mess with you, right? And like,
yeah, because I know they have some kayak tournaments, some clubs fish there this time of year. But
Bob wants to know if you know who Mark Burgess is.
Oh, absolutely. He's New England. I'm not sure which state up there. He's got to be. He's fishing this year. I saw his name on the list there on the Potomac River. I'm sure he's got 20 state teams or something. When you went to those divisionals, there was one or two guys from every state that were just always there, and he's one of them.
Sure.
He's a real good fisherman. He's a good guy too. I know who he is. Yeah.
Very cool.
I see that Dave Andrews is there too, and I think Dave Andrews might have made a classic through the Federation. I'm not 100% sure. If he hasn't, he will. He's probably the best fisherman in New Hampshire, unless if that's where Mark Burgess is, because they're kind of on the same caliber.
Hey, Gabe. Nice to see
Moving
you.
new house.
He's a buddy down in Illinois, Missouri, or he's moving into a new house, cutting into his fishing time.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want.
Well, we're creeping on 3 hours. Ed, I feel like we covered a lot of ground. My drink's almost done. My bladder is pretty full. So I think we're gonna have to wrap it up.
That's
tonight.
Yeah, I looked at the time and it went pretty fast.
It's almost midnight where you are.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's 11:48. It says.
So I really enjoyed it. If anybody came in late, I think covered a lot of ground, a lot of great information. Go back, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, catch the replay or listen to it on MP3. Search HellaBass in your favorite MP3 player. Ed, I totally appreciate it. This was a ton of fun, and it was worth the wait having you on.
Okay. Yeah. It was great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And like I said, check out Ed's Instagram. I think it's Ed Cowan 5.
Yeah.
And check out some of his baits. Some of his fishing. You can pick his brain, and maybe we'll do a watch party. Sometimes in my members only, I'll watch old Lynn Dollar videos and commentate on them. Maybe you'd want to come do that sometime.
Oh yeah, that would be cool. Because you know what, I every time they went to the Thousand Islands, I made the climb the big waves into the lake shots because I had the right combination. Because they'd stay at they'd sit out there at Cape Vincent waiting for a Johnson powered Ranger to try to climb out of the these big monster waves into the lake. Oh,
very cool.
One more quick story.
Sure.
So I pulled this guy, Dwight Shue. He played on the World Football League at the Thousand Islands, and we're running out of Clayton. We're running towards the lake, and these boats are running back the other way. And he goes, "There must be another tournament." I said, "No, there's not another tournament.
They're turning around.
It might be a little rough." And we get to that mouth of that river, and this guy's an ex-football player, and his eyes were big as as moon pies. And we went out, and I didn't break the boat to the third day and not make way in. In that one, there's 1,000 stories about going out on the Great Lakes. That's a crazy place to be. And
yeah,
they both do it pre GPS, pre cell phone.
Yeah, I fished a regional out of Escanaba, Michigan. So Big Bay to Knock at the top, like above Green Bay, the Michigan.
Yeah.
And day 3, they let us out, and they probably shouldn't have. And I drew a guy from Iowa, and it was in my dad's 19-foot Triton. And I grew up fishing Lake of the Woods walleyes with my dad. So used to reasonably big water and like knew how to like handle a boat. And he's like, that was really amazing. You know, like, you're a heck of a boat driver, but he's like, when he got back, he kissed the ground on the dock at the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh, trivia question. What was the first day bass ever canceled? Because you might not realize, but way back they went no matter what.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that. No.
It was a practice day for the 91 Classic on Chesapeake Bay.
Chesapeake?
Yeah. That's because back in the 80s, the Seneca Lake tournament among New York guys was legendary because they should have never let them go out. The one, Paul Elias won. He basically won because he was the only guy catching fish in the south end of the lake, and nobody got back. That ran north. It was Seneca Lake's bad. Yeah.
The day that I'm talking about, though, there was like several boats phoned it in and stayed in like Big Bay, and just they said, somebody go get my trailer. I'm not driving back. And then one of the guys that was staying in my hotel, Ben Petrasky, he had an 18 or 19 foot champion, and he actually sheared the jack plate coming back in. And he was lucky that there was like a tugboat, like a safety boat, that got out to him because, you know.
Yeah. I sheared the upper motor mount bolts at the third day at the Thousand Islands that year.
Sure.
Yeah. And I sheared the bolts out the side of the trim pump out there. Didn't run a jackbait because I bent every one. Yeah, those Great Lakes bass boats don't belong out there. I wrote those up. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate it, Ed. We'll do this again sometime. As always, here to help you guys catch more big bass and suck less.
Yes. Okay. Good night, guys.